Chapter 16:15. Understood. This was also what Yang Xian wanted to say. He did not want the 5-star army to attack because of his wrong decision. If that happened, there was an 80% chance that the Guangzhou prefecture would follow in the footsteps of the Nanning prefecture. The problem was, after the 5-star army conquered Guangxi, would they continue to attack the east and conquer Guangdong? The answer was in Yang Qindong's heart: they would not. There were many reasons why they would not do so. For example, they did not have enough excuses, they did not have a good reason to attack, the current southern Ming was quite strong, and if they continued to fight, both sides would suffer losses, etc. Ultimately, Yang Qindong, or Yang Xia, and the 5-star army were not fully prepared. 6 years ago, because Yuandong province was attacked, Yang Qindong personally led the army and fought until now. The results of these 6 years were so great that it completely exceeded Yang Qindong's expectations. Before this, he wasn't mentally prepared for this. Even if they conquered 3 provinces this time, it was because of Zhu Huihua's provocation. Otherwise, Yang Qindong would have returned to Qiqian City to rest. The situation was already beyond his expectations. The management staff could not keep up, and the army also needed to rest after a long battle. If he wanted to attack southern Ming, he did not know how much military resources and supplies he would need. Before all of these were prepared, Yang Qindong wanted to stop here. Of course, if southern Ming took the initiative to provoke him, then he would not be polite. If he didn't have enough management personnel, he could just use the old people from the southern Ming Empire. Then, when there were new people, he could slowly replace them. Although doing this would cause instability in the rear, Yang Qindong wouldn't admit defeat when facing the southern Ming Empire's army. As for conquering Gaozhou and Laizhou, Yang Qindong really wanted to open up a sea supply route. In this way, all kinds of military supplies could enter the 3 provinces faster, and it would play a great role in stabilizing the situation. With such benefits, he had no choice but to do it. As for whether this would cause the southern Ming Empire to be disgusted or even take the initiative to send troops, Yang Qindong didn't want to think too much about it. What's the matter? You guys didn't care when Zhu Huixiang sent troops to Langsun. You guys even supported Zhu Huixiang with cannons. You even let Wang Mubin of Shiping deal with me. Taking down these 2 houses would be considered as interest. That was what Yang Qindong thought. After allowing Xiao Feng to take down Laizhou prefecture, he ordered Ling Feng and the 2nd Division to build a port to receive the resources from Qiqian City. He himself was waiting for the southern Ming imperial court to send someone to negotiate with him. Although there was a southern Ming envoy named Zhou Xiang in the Nanning prefecture, Yang Qindong wasn't going to talk to him. This person's rank was too low. He had already received news that Minister Xia Chong had personally come. Since that was the case, it was better to have a chat with this person. Zhou Xiang, who had been neglected, was much more haggard than a month ago. He didn't know what was going on outside. He couldn't sleep well and didn't eat well. He had lost more than 5 kilograms. He had also requested to meet with His Highness Bugnam of Gojoseon more than once. At this moment, he no longer had the arrogance from before. Even when he spoke to a courier, he was very polite. However, even though he was polite, the courier didn't take him seriously. Perhaps it could be said that the order he received was to watch Zhou Xiang and the others. Everything else had nothing to do with him. He had requested for a meeting for several days. In order to achieve his goal, he had even taken out all of his valuables. It was all to curry favor with a courier. However, there was still no progress. At first, he thought that the other party thought it was too little, so he kept increasing the price. However, in the end, he realized that the other party really didn't want to accept it. On this point, Zhou Xiang was filled with emotions. Since ancient times, there had been a saying that there were 7 rank officials in front of the Prime Minister's door. It was said that the status of a servant was similar to that of the master. When the master was powerful, the small people under him could also benefit and even rise to the heavens. Just like in the current southern Ming dynasty, many servants of the big families were all arrogant. Sometimes, they could even complete some tasks that only the officials could do. When they returned, they would receive some benefits. This was something that everyone tacitly agreed upon. After all, many things that the master wanted to do required the servants to complete. Why didn't this work in the 5-star army? Just from this small matter, one could see the power of the 5-star army. He couldn't even bribe a small courier. Zhou Xiang didn't know what else he could do. Just like that, the days passed with sighs and sighs. Until one day, Ba Daojiang suddenly appeared in the courier. When Zhou Xiang saw the other party, tears actually flowed out of his eyes. It was as if he had seen his family after many years. At this moment, Zhou Xiang was indeed very emotional. He had finally met someone who kept his word. Assistant Minister Zhou, what happened to you? Could it be that someone mistreated you? Ba Daojiang was also shocked by the tears flowing out of Zhou Xiang's eyes. He instinctively thought that someone had done something unfavorable to the southern Ming dynasty. No. Seeing that Ba Daojiang had misunderstood, Zhou Xiang shook his head and said, "We are very good here. There is enough food and drink, and there is a lot of variety. It is really good." This wasn't to say that Zhou Xiang was flattering, but it was the truth. When it came to food, Yang would never be thrifty or diligent when it came to it. Using a sentence that Yang Qindong once said, if one wanted to change every day, they wouldn't even be satisfied with food. If they couldn't change, then what change was there to change? Oh. Ba Daojiang nodded his head in satisfaction after hearing this. He also didn't believe that someone would dare to do such a thing. The 5-star army rewarded the soldiers with great merits very generously, but at the same time, the punishment for the soldiers who made mistakes was also very severe. It was just like how the soldiers didn't dare to accept Zhou Xiang's money. Because once they accepted it, it wasn't a matter of whether they could keep their money, but whether they could keep their lives. At that time, their family would also be humiliated because of it. Everything was just for a bit of money, but they had to pay such a heavy price. It was no wonder that although the soldiers were tempted, none of them dared to accept the money. Ba Daojiang knew that there wasn't a problem with the treatment, but he was even more curious. Why was Zhou Xiang crying when they met again after not seeing each other for more than a month? Speaking of which, they didn't have much of a relationship before, and this was only the second time they met. Moreover, the experience of meeting for the first time wasn't something that could make one happy, right? How could Ba Daojiang understand Zhou Xiang's emotions? After all, if he hadn't been imprisoned for more than a month, he wouldn't be able to understand that feeling. It was just that the smart Zhou Xiang would not voice out his feelings during this period of time. If he had the slightest bit of resentment, he was afraid that he would provoke the other party and leave in a huff. If that happened, he would not be able to call out to the heavens and the earth. He did not know how long he would have to endure. Not only did he not dare to complain, he also pretended to be fawning and asked, "Sir, is Bugnam of Gojoseon here to see this official?" "Oh, that's not it." Ba Daojiang became more serious when they talked about serious matters. Little did he know that the moment he said this, Zhou Xiang's mood instantly fell to the bottom. If he wasn't here to see him, was he just here to greet him? Or was he here to see if he and the others were dead? Or was he here to end his life? When he thought of the latter, Zhou Xiang's face turned green, then quickly turned pale. It was obvious that he was really afraid. Ba Daojiang saw Zhou Xiang's expression and already guessed what he was thinking. He couldn't help but chuckle and say, "Assistant Minister Zhou, don't think too much. This time, I'm here on Bugnam of Gojoseon's orders to let you and the others go. We've already received news that your Minister of Rights, Xie Chong, has arrived at the Guangzhou government. Since he's here, it's better to let him handle the negotiations. You can go back now and inform Minister Xie to come to the Nanning government. At that time, Bugnam of Gojoseon will also arrive at the Nanning government. If there's anything, it's better to discuss it in detail there." After saying this, Ba Daojiang seemed to have thought of something and added, "By the way, Bugnam of Gojoseon is busy with military affairs and has many things to deal with. Therefore, I hope that Minister Xie can arrive at the Nanning government as soon as possible. If it's too late, I'm afraid that Bugnam of Gojoseon won't be able to hold back and continue to mobilize his troops. If that happens, then no one can be blamed. That's enough. I've delivered the message, so I'm leaving. Assistant Minister Zhou, you can pack up and leave with the diplomatic group as soon as possible. Ba Daojiang didn't care about Zhou Xiang's reaction. After saying this, he turned around and left, leaving Zhou Xiang with his back to him. Zhou Xiang stood in the same place for more than 10 breaths. After pondering over Ba Daojiang's words, Zhou Xiang suddenly let out a scream. Then, he shouted, "Hurry, hurry, pack up, we're leaving now, right now." In the three provinces' king's residence, Yang Chendong was talking to Yao Yingjun in the main hall. The entire Guangxi had become one of Yang Xie's territories. Yunnan and Guizhou had begun to stabilize after more than a month of turmoil, so Yang Chendong had no need to stay here. After all, he wasn't Zhu Huiyun, nor was he the three provinces' king. In his eyes, there was only a palm-sized area. He called Yao Yingjun over to listen to his work report and the next step of the work plan. Fortunately, after more than a month of learning, Yao Yingjun had begun to adapt to his current work, and he was getting better and better at it day by day. In front of Yang Chendong, Yao Yingjun roughly explained the plans of the three provinces for the next few years. The main focus was on the migration of the people, distribution of land, and economic development. Chapter 16:16. In the process of listening to the report, Yang Chendong would add some of his own opinions from time to time. Yao Yingjun kept nodding as he listened, and then took notes. Evidently, being able to hear Yang Chendong's direct teachings was something that all of the Yang Xie officials were envious of. It took more than 2 hours for the report to be completed. At the end, Yao Yingjun looked at Yang Chendong and said, "Sixth young master, I have a request that I hope you can agree to." "What is it?" "Tell me." Yang Chendong thought that Yao Yingjun wanted financial support. After all, it was impossible to move without money. "Sixth young master, I would like to send my wife, Zhu Lian, to Qiqian City. As you know, I will have a lot of work to do. I'm afraid that I won't have time to take care of my family in the near future, so." How was this about not having time to take care of his family? Yao Yingjun was basically handing his family's weakness to Yang Chendong. Soon, he would become a high-ranking official in the local government, a high-ranking official with real power in his hands. Moreover, he was so close to the southern Ming dynasty. Who knew how many people would want his position and play tricks behind his back? In order to prevent Yang Chendong from suspecting him, Yao Yingjun decided to send his family to Qiqian City. This way, the trust level would be much higher. For Yao Yingjun to make such a decision, it was enough to prove that he was a smart person. Yang Chendong liked to interact with smart people. This way, he could save a lot of effort. Of course, Yang Chendong was more concerned about old friendships. Ever since Yao Yingjun joined the Yang faction, he had been working in the secret battlefront. It was not easy for him to lead an army privately. Now that he had to send his family away in such a short time, it was too cruel for him. Yang Chendong didn't want to leave an impression that he couldn't tolerate or trust people. Therefore, when faced with Yao Yingjun's request, he only said after a moment of silence, "Zhu Lian doesn't need to go to Crimson City. She has lived here since she was young, and I'm afraid she won't be able to adapt to other places. Without you accompanying her, it would be even more boring. This young master doesn't want to break apart a couple, ha ha ha." Yang Chendong actually refused. Although Yao Yingjun was happy, he was also anxious. This was the time for him to show his loyalty. He could not give up just because of Yang Chendong's rejection. Wouldn't that give others the impression that he was acting? More importantly, he would feel uneasy if he didn't reveal anything that could be used against him. At that time, he was afraid that there would only be other methods to monitor him. That would also be very uncomfortable. As such, Yao Yingjun decided to try again, saying, "Sixth young master, this subject has already discussed this with my wife, and she has agreed. All right, this young master can understand how you feel. However, Zhu Lian and you truly love each other, so it's best that you don't separate. Besides, you're tired from work and need someone to take care of you. How about this? Don't you have 2 children? Send them to Crimson City to study with this young master's princes and princesses. They'll have feelings for each other from a young age, and in the future, they'll be able to help them achieve greater things. Perhaps they'll be even more impressive than you, their father, ha ha ha. He had thought that Yang Qindong had rejected him because he had better methods to monitor him. However, after hearing this, Yao Yingjuan's tears immediately flowed out. Even though sending his 2 children to Crimson City was also a form of hostages. However, it was undeniable that this result was much better than sending Zhu Lian over. At least, as Yang Qindong had said, letting the children interact with each other would be very beneficial for the children's development in the future. Yang Qindong had already conquered a lot of land, and there was no need to say anything more. His children would inherit a lot of the family business, and now that they had a good relationship with the future successors, many Yangxia generals hoped for this. Now that it had fallen on his head, it would be a lie if he wasn't emotional. Yang Qindong didn't like to see people cry, especially men crying in front of him, so he quickly waved his hand and said, "All right, wipe your tears. If you want to thank the young master, you have to do the work at hand well. If there's anything you can't solve, you can send a telegram at any time. If there's anything disobedient, you can execute it and report it. The young master will support you." This was equivalent to receiving an imperial edict. Yao Yingjun once again prostrated himself on the ground and shouted, "Long live the king." However, everyone knew that it wouldn't take long for this to become 10,000 years. At this time, Yangxia was so big that it had far surpassed the Great Ming. If Yang Qindong didn't become an emperor, the people below would probably be unhappy. Yao Yingjun left with a grateful expression, and it was time for Yang Qindong to leave Yunnan. Immediately, 2,000 black cavalry followed to protect them, and the Third Army's commander, Wu Sheng, personally led the troops to escort them. The group left Yunnan Prefecture and went straight to Nanning Prefecture. When Yang Qindong left the city, all the people in Yunnan Prefecture moved out. They came out of their own accord to send Yang Qindong off. It was because of this person's arrival that the people's lives had undergone earth-shaking changes. Not only did they no longer need to worry about war and personal safety, but everyone was also given a new piece of land and had a goal in life. This was something that many people had never dreamed of. Riding on the white dragon and looking at the scene of the people sending him off, Yang Qindong said emotionally to Yao Yingjun, who was sending him off, "Did you see that? Those who win the hearts of the people win the world. As long as the hearts of the people are there, there's nothing that can't be done. You local officials and officials must remember this." "Yes, this subject will remember." Yao Yingjun replied as if he had been taught something. Nanning Prefecture. Commander Tian, who was riding a horse outside the city. There were several teachers with him. They all knew that the 6th young master would visit Nanning Prefecture today. For this, not only did they clean up the city again, they also sent many cavalry to protect him. Today, the importance of Yang Qindong's safety was far greater than that of the Emperor of Southern Baiming. There were many Nanning people in the welcoming team. They stood on both sides of the road either out of curiosity or out of gratitude. Without the Wolf Fang special forces sent by Yang Qindong, all the people would have been killed by the cannons. Just based on this point, it was worth everyone coming out of the city to welcome Bugnam of Gojoseon. There was another group of people in the crowd. There were many of them, about 1,000 people. They were wearing the Southern Ming official uniform that was somewhat out of place. They were the Southern Ming officials led by the Southern Ming Minister of Rights, Xie Chong. After Zhou Xiang was allowed to leave Yunnan Prefecture, he rushed all the way to Guangzhou Prefecture and met the Minister of Rights, Xie Chong. After repeating the words of Badao River, Xie Chong could no longer remain calm. He left Guangzhou Prefecture overnight and went straight to Nanning Prefecture. Xie Chong couldn't guess whether Yang Qindong would continue to send troops or not. However, he definitely couldn't allow the 5-star army to send troops because of him. If he really did that, he was afraid that the emperor would be furious. He only had one head, and it wouldn't be enough to chop it off. After rushing for a while, he finally reached Nanning Prefecture before Yang Qindong. Xia Chong was smart enough not to enter the city. In order to express his attitude, he decided to wait here for Yang Qindong to enter the city first. Although it was said that Yang Qindong already had the intention of lowering his head, but thinking about it, Yang Qindong was Wu Nan Wang, who was recognized by the two emperors of the Great Ming Dynasty. It was not a big deal for a subject to be respectful to a king. Tianhu and the others could understand why Xia Chong would appear here. Especially when they saw that the Minister of Rights, who was so high and mighty, had to respectfully welcome their king at this moment, they felt even more honored. Didn't this also prove that the strength of the five-star army was constantly rising? As everyone was looking forward to it, a black shadow finally appeared in the distance. Then, one after another, the bright five-star army flag could be seen. It's Bugnam of Gojosian. Everyone, line up. Tian, who saw that the troops were getting closer and closer, so he hurriedly shouted. This time, because Division Commander Xiao Feng was in Liezhou Prefecture supervising the construction of the harbor, he didn't rush to Nanning Prefecture. Thus, he became the boss here. If something went wrong, he would have to bear the main responsibility, so he couldn't help but be careful. Fortunately, the elite warriors of the world's #1 cavalry army were arranged everywhere, so safety shouldn't be a problem. About half an hour later, Yang Qindong's troops finally arrived in front of Nanning Prefecture's west gate. Tian, who had already brought everyone to stand on both sides and saluted to welcome them. At the same time, his eyes were filled with excitement as he looked at Yang Qindong. Although they hadn't been apart for long. Without Yang Qindong's command, the world's #1 cavalry army seemed to have lost its soul and felt all kinds of uneasy. Now that they could fight side by side with the 6th young master, of course everyone was excited. You've all worked hard. Yang Qindong, who was riding on the white dragon, returned a military salute when he arrived in front of Tianhu and the others. Then, his gaze seemed to intentionally look in Xia Chong's direction, but he ignored him and entered the city accompanied by Tianhu and the others. In a distant corner, Vice Envoy Zhou Xiang said excitedly, Bugnam of Gojosian saw us. He saw us. I know. What are you shouting for? What are you doing? Xia Chong also saw this scene, but he wasn't very excited. On the contrary, he felt that Yang Qindong cared about ignoring him, which made him feel very uncomfortable. However, when he thought about how his strength was inferior, what else could he do besides lowering his head? Finally, Yang Qindong, who was surrounded by people, entered the city. Xia Chong also tidied up his clothes and prepared to enter the city. Just now, not only did he see Bugnam of Gojosian and Yang Qindong, but he also saw the might of the world's #1 cavalry army. It had to be said that this cavalry army not only had a large number of people, but they were also skilled in horse riding. Under their control, all the warhorses didn't make any sound, and none of the warhorses jumped out of the formation, which was very terrifying. Chapter 16-17. It must be known that these were livestock, not humans. To be able to make them so obedient, it must have taken a lot of effort. Based on this, it could be seen that this cavalry was not ordinary. Xia Chong, who had learned riding and archery, had his own horse. He still remembered that it took a long time to tame it. In the end, he was only able to ride it. He could not reach the level of familiarity with it like the cavalry in front of him. Even a single horse could not do this, let alone so many warhorses. From this point, this was an army that was not easy to deal with. Coincidentally, in the entire Southern Ming army, there were no decent cavalry. Due to the environment, the 2.5 million soldiers of the Southern Ming army were almost all infantrymen. Comparing them, wasn't it obvious who was superior? Thus, Xia Chong had a rough understanding of the strength of the 5-star army. In his heart, he was thinking that it would be better if he could negotiate. As long as Bugnam of Gojosian's request was not too excessive, so what if he satisfied him? After all, if they really fought, the Southern Ming army's chances of winning were too low. Yang Qindong naturally did not know that the world's #1 cavalry army's formation to welcome him would scare Xia Chong. After he entered the city, he stationed himself in the largest courtyard in the city. This was a place that Tian Hu specially prepared for Yang Chendong to rest. The courtyard was very clean. There was a rockery, a garden, and a pond. The environment looked very good. You are considerate. After Yang Chendong roughly looked around the courtyard, he nodded to Tian Hu in satisfaction. Then he said, "Go and arrange it. Let the Southern Ming envoy come and see me." At this point, Yang Chendong did not intend to continue fighting with the Southern Ming army. Since they were not fully prepared, they would stop fighting first. Of course, since he had the upper hand, he needed to ask for some benefits. He was also confident that the Southern Ming army would agree to his request. Because compared to him, the other side was not prepared for war. Not fighting? Tian Hu was shocked. After all, for a battlefield-killing god like him, if there was no war, it would not reflect their value. After asking this question, Tian Hu was somewhat regretful. He should not have questioned such a big matter. Although he was Yang Chendong's student and was now the famous commander of the world's #1 cavalry army, there were some things that he could not ask. On the contrary, Yang Chendong did not show any dissatisfaction. Let's see what the Southern Ming Empire's attitude is first. After all, everyone here is Han. It's best if we don't fight. To be able to give such an answer, Tian Hu was already very satisfied. Then he said, "Tian Hu's #1 cavalry." Although Yang Chendong had been the Bugnam of Gojoseon for more than 10 years, he was still unable to adapt to his current role. Therefore, he gave such an answer to Tian Hu's question. If it was the two emperors of the southern Baiming or Zhu Huihua, they would definitely not answer this question. Tian Hu moved quickly and quickly sent people to find Xia Chong and the others in the city. Then, he led them to Yang Chendong's temporary residence. In the main hall, both sides were able to meet. Facing Xia Chong, Yang Chendong could not be so casual. He first sat on the main chair in the main hall. When Xia Chong appeared, the other party could only look up to see him. Southern Ming Ministry of Rights Minister Xia Chong greets Bugnam of Gojoseon. Ministry of Rights Left Assistant Minister Zhou Zi Ong greets Bugnam of Gojoseon. Dispense with the formalities. Yang Chendong raised his hand and said with a calm expression. Then, without saying anything, he asked directly, "Both of you, I heard that you are here to negotiate on behalf of the Southern Ming Imperial Court. What are your rules? Why don't you tell me everything?" Xia Chong was obviously not used to Yang Chendong's straightforward way of opening. Shouldn't both sides talk about their daily lives and friendship first before talking about business? Now, he was asking about the other party's trump card. Anyone with a bit of common sense in negotiations would not ask such a question. Did Yang Chendong not know how to negotiate? Of course not. Yang Chendong's political wisdom was not low. The reason why he said this was to create pressure on the other party and let them know that the initiative of the negotiation was in his hands. The use of the word negotiation made it even more obvious that the Yang faction and the Southern Ming Empire were on equal footing. It wasn't a matter of who was the subordinate of the other. Otherwise, there would not be such a term. Xia Chong was not used to Yang Chendong's rhythm and method. For a moment, he did not know what to say. Yang Chendong deliberately frowned. What? Did this prince misunderstand? You are not here to negotiate, but to declare war? All right, this prince understands your intentions. Please go back now. Please also tell the Southern Ming Emperor that we will meet on the battlefield. Come, send the guests out. Yes. Beta Persei at the side immediately said and prepared to step out. This action gave Xia Chong a fright. Although some words were easy to say and unpleasant to hear, he really was here to negotiate on behalf of the Southern Ming Empire. Especially before the Southern Ming Empire was ready for war, it was better not to fight this war. And if the war continued because of him, the emperor would not be appeased even if he was killed. No, Bugnam of Gojoseon misunderstood. We are indeed here to negotiate. Xia Chong knew that he could not continue pretending. In order to complete his mission, he had no choice but to lower his head at this moment. From the moment he said this, it also proved that he recognized Xianxia and the Southern Ming Empire as existences on the same level. Alright, then tell me your thoughts. Yang Qindong wanted this kind of rhythm. Facing the somewhat aggressive Yang Qindong, Xia Chong found that the words he prepared before could not be used. For example, the words that insisted that Yang Qindong was still a subject of the Great Ming Empire could not be said. This was because the other party was not afraid of war at all. On the contrary, he was the one who was afraid of war. However, there were still some words that needed to be said. Under Yang Qindong's guidance, Xia Chong opened his mouth. Prince Bugnam of Gojoseon, Emperor Ingzong's intention is to allow you to establish a new power outside of the Southern Ming Empire. The Southern Ming Empire's imperial court will recognize the existence of this new power. However, the current Yunnan, Guizhou, and Guangxi must be returned to the Southern Ming Empire. This includes the captured Shiping King Mu Bin, Sanxing King Zhu Huifu, and the others. Also, enough. Just by listening to the beginning, Yang Qindong knew that the Southern Ming Empire did not see how powerful he was. At this moment, they were still holding on to unrealistic fantasies. Did they really think that he was just a king with a different surname and did not dare to fall out with the Southern Ming Empire? Yang Qindong did not make a move now because he was not fully prepared. He did not want more Han people to lose their homes and lives because of war. This was not because he was afraid. On the contrary, if he was really angered, even if he made a move now, he could guarantee that he would win this war. Moreover, the 5-star army would definitely obtain the final victory. At most, he would have to pay a higher price and more Han people would die. It was because he considered the safety of the civilians that Yang Qindong decided to temporarily stop advancing. However, this did not mean that he was afraid. If Zhu Qizhen had such thoughts, then there was no need for this peace talk. Xia Chong's expression turned a little ugly when he was rejected after just 2 sentences. However, considering that the 5-star army was at its peak, he suppressed the anger in his heart and said, "However, I wonder what Bugnam of Gojoseon's intentions are." This prince's intentions? It's very simple. As long as the Southern Ming Empire agrees to these requests, our Yangxia army will stop advancing and guarantee that we will not invade. Oh. This lowly official is willing to listen to Bugnam of Gojoseon's intentions. Hearing that the 5-star army would stop advancing, Xia Chong was also interested. As for the so-called conditions, there was nothing to lose by listening to it first, right? Moreover, since you have brought up the conditions, we can discuss them later. Let's not talk about whether we can come to an agreement or not. At least, there was one point that could be delayed for a while. As such, under the gazes of Xia Chong and Zhou Ziang, Yang Qindong opened his mouth. This war was originally planned by your Southern Ming Empire. Don't deny it. If it wasn't for your tacit approval, Zhu Huichu wouldn't have had the guts to attack my Liangshan. Shiping King Mubin wouldn't have sent his men to kill this prince without orders and then personally led his troops to attack this prince. Also, the cannons used to attack this prince were also transported from your Southern Ming kingdom, right? This should be enough to prove everything. All along, this prince has scrupulously abided by the duties of a subject. Even if the 5-star army was extremely powerful and wiped out all the foreign races around the Great Ming Empire, this prince still respected the Great Ming Empire greatly. Not only did this prince not have the intention to attack, but this prince also provided large amounts of food to the imperial court. Furthermore, the price was so low that this prince had to use money to subsidize it. However, on the other hand, how did you treat this prince? Blindly wanting to kill this prince. Speaking of this, it really makes one's heart cold. Although it is said that if the ruler wants the subject to die, the subject has no choice but to die, this prince has done so many things for the Great Ming Empire. Even back then at the Tuma Castle, if this prince did not make a move, Ingzong would have already met with disaster. Since this is the case, this prince has already done his duty as a subject. Now that the ruler wants to kill this prince, then this prince will live for himself this time. When these words entered Xia Chong's ears, he couldn't help but lower his head. Many of the things that Yang Qindong had accused the Southern Ming Empire of were true. If they really wanted to make a fuss about it, then the Southern Ming Empire had indeed let down Yang Chendong. This was because all along, Yang Xia had always been the party that paid the price, and the Southern Ming Empire was the party that received benefits. However, the result now was that Yang Chendong had to die. This was too much of a bully. If Xia Chong had Yang Xia's powerful strength, he would probably not be able to resist jumping up and opposing the Southern Ming Empire. Chapter 16-18. Since Xia Chong did not speak, Zhou Ziong was even more speechless. It was clear that they were the weaker side in this negotiation. Even if the peace talks ended, the Southern Ming Empire would only suffer losses. Even so, no matter who initiated the negotiations, the emperor would not be satisfied. At this time, there was no way to hide. Who would take the initiative to charge forward? Since the envoy and deputy did not speak, Yang Chendong continued, "Even if you are not benevolent, this prince cannot be unjust. After all, this is a place where the Han people live. This prince is also a Han official. If this prince does not have to use military force, this prince is unwilling to use it. However, this prince must give an explanation for the previous matter. This is also an explanation for this prince and the officials under this prince. Thus, I will raise the following conditions. First, the Southern Ming Empire must recognize Yang Xia's legal authority over Yunnan, Guizhou, and Guangxi. These territories were taken from Zhu Huiyun by this prince. It was also because of Zhu Huiyun's request that I went to Southern Yun Manor. Now that the development has been settled, there must be an explanation. Second, other than Guangdong's Laizhou Manor, the Southern Ming Empire also needs to open up Chaozhou Manor, Fuzhou Manor, Taizhou Manor, Ningbo Manor, Songjiang Manor, and Huaiyan Manor. Our Yang Xia can build a military port there. Of course, the sovereignty of these places will still belong to the Southern Ming Empire. Our Yang Xia is also willing to pay some rent. Third, as a fellow Han, this prince will definitely not watch the Han people suffer. If the Southern Ming Empire's policies or the officials do not care for the people, causing some people to want to leave the Southern Ming Empire for our Yang Xia, the Southern Ming Empire will not stop them. We should respect the people's choice. If someone tries to stop them, then I, Yang Xia, will reserve the right to send troops to rescue them. Fourth, Yang Xia is willing to continue trading with the Southern Ming Empire. However, the Southern Ming Empire must guarantee the safety of the Yang Xia merchants. If something happens to them, Yang Xia will also reserve the right to send troops to rescue them. Fifth, for the prosperity of trade, Yang Xia is permitted to open banks in the Southern Ming Empire. Of course, we will pay the taxes that should be paid on time. However, if someone has designs on the bank, then we will also protect the right to rescue them. Sixth, due to the bad weather this year, the grain harvest in the Yang Xia region is poor, and the price of grain will increase by 30%. In some remote areas, the price of grain may increase by 40% to 50%. I hope that the Southern Ming Imperial Court can understand this. After all, the price of rations will be higher if there is less. This kind of thing has happened many times. 7. Yang Xia is willing to have more exchanges with the Southern Ming Empire. After the various ports are built, Yang Xia will have specialized passenger ships to open up the waterway from Qiqian City to the Southern Ming Empire. At that time, if the Southern Ming Empire is willing to send people to Qiqian City for inspection, they can apply first. After they pass the inspection, they can enter Yang Xia's land to study and learn. 8. Yang Xia, Yang Chendong already had a draft in his mind. Things came out of his mouth one after another, and his requests also increased. Hearing this, Xia Chong could not help but break out in cold sweat. As for the specific terms of the negotiation, it still needed to be analyzed word by word. However, after hearing this, Xia Chong already knew one thing. That was, from this moment onwards, the Southern Ming Empire and Yang Xia were no longer subordinate to each other, although they were not in the past. However, from this moment onwards, the two sides were on equal footing. Yang Chendong's ambition had already been exposed. However, even if this was the case, what could Xia Chong say? Could he say that he did not agree? Could he say that the Southern Ming Empire would send an army to teach the five-star army how to behave? If he could not do this, then it was better not to mention it. The situation was stronger than the person, and the fist was not as strong as the person. If he still wanted to reason with the other party, that was not courage, but stupidity. After nearly half an hour, Yang Chendong roughly explained his requests. Then, he looked at Xie Chang's pale face and said, "This is only the preliminary negotiation outline that this king has drafted. As for the specific matters, I, Yang Xie's foreign affairs chief, will discuss it with Minister Xie. You can also send this general request back to the Southern Ming Empire's capital, so that the emperor will know first. However, there is one thing that this king wants to make clear. The Southern Ming Empire must agree to the above conditions. Otherwise, the Southern Ming Empire will be seen as insincere. Next, just treat it as self-protection. The iron cavalry of the five-star army will not stop moving forward. At that time, don't say that I, Yang Chendong, did not take into account the relationship between the monarch and his subjects. Okay, Beta Persei, send the guests off." The tall Beta Persei immediately stepped forward and said to Xie Chong and Zhou Xiang expressionlessly, "Two sirs, please. If that's the case, this official will take his leave." Xie Chong also knew that there was no point in arguing at this moment. Rather than that, it was better to immediately write a memorial to inform the imperial court of Yang Chendong's request. As for what to do next, it was a matter between the emperor and the imperial court. He could no longer interfere. Xie Chong and Zhou Ziang finally left. At the back of the main hall, a similarly sturdy middle-aged man walked in. His face was dignified without being angry. Just by looking at him, one could feel a sense of ferocity. And he was Yang Xie's foreign affairs chief, Ma Dali. Generally, as a diplomat, they needed to look more amiable and friendly. This way, they would be more acceptable and their words would be more resonant. However, Yang Chendong did the opposite. His foreign affairs chief looked more frightening, and only this could better intimidate some people. After all, the current Yang Xie was incomparably powerful. The so-called negotiation ultimately depended on the strength of both sides. Otherwise, there wouldn't be the saying of weak countries having no diplomacy. It was precisely because they were strong enough that they needed to be tough in their diplomacy. This was something that Ma Dali did very well. He looked fierce, had a loud voice, and had a bad temper. He would often scold people if they didn't agree with him. However, it was this kind of life that was most suitable for the current Yang Xie. This time, Ma Dali was transferred over from Resin City to play this role. It was to put pressure on the Southern Ming Empire. Moreover, with Yang Chendong's current status, there were too many things that he needed to do. He wouldn't argue with the other party over something like negotiation. Ma Dali gladly accepted this task. Speaking of which, he could be considered an old member of Yang Xie. He had been the foreign affairs chief for nearly 10 years. This didn't conform to the Yang Xie's system of changing officials. However, no one said anything about this matter. Why was that? The reason was simple. Don't look at the Foreign Affairs Department's reputation. Because of the strength of the five-star army, they would often destroy a country if they didn't agree with them. As such, the Foreign Affairs Department often existed in name only. It wasn't of much use at all, and there wasn't much for them to negotiate with. Over time, the Foreign Affairs Department's authority was greatly reduced. Anyone with ambition was unwilling to become an official in the Foreign Affairs Department. After all, what was the difference between becoming an official in a useless department and retiring? Ma Dali was extremely depressed because of this. He didn't believe that the Foreign Affairs Department would have nothing to do. He was just waiting for an opportunity. Although he had been treated coldly over the years, he still didn't give up. He was waiting. This was because he had carefully analyzed that their king was an extreme racialist. This could be seen from the rising status of the Han people. With this kind of thinking, they could deal with other foreign races and other countries, but only the Great Ming, which was the land of the Han, could not be so rashly send out troops. Otherwise, it would definitely be a loss for the Han people. At this time, it was time for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to help. Ma Dali's thinking was right. As expected, a telegram was sent to the Foreign Affairs Department. Yang Qindong personally asked Ma Dali to bring a negotiation team to Nanning. When Ma Dali understood the deeper meaning behind this, he organized enough people to take a boat and arrived at Nanning before Yang Qindong. Just like before, he had heard the conversation between Yang Qindong, Xie Chong, and Zhou Ziang. Now that he was angry, it was obvious that Yang Qindong wanted to hear his opinion. Previously, when he was hiding in the corner, he saw Xie Chong and Zhou Ziang's actions. At this moment, Ma Dali spoke with great confidence. "Sixth young master, don't worry. I will do my best to ensure that the great Ming agrees to all of our conditions." "He, this king believes that you won't. Department head Ma, feel free to do whatever you want. Even if the negotiations fail, there is no need to be afraid. When the time comes, our cavalry will directly enter Guangdong." Yang Qindong didn't want to give Ma Dali any pressure, so he smiled and said. Yang Qindong was working with the idea of slowly encroaching on the Great Ming's political power. However, if the Great Ming didn't cooperate, then he would have to cut the Gordian knot and take the initiative to send troops. Although this way, the losses would be greater, but it might not be a bad thing to take over the Great Ming sooner. Yes, this subject understands. Ma Dali was full of confidence when he heard this. With a powerful military backing, what was there to be afraid of? Ma Dali left confidently. Yang Qindong stretched and looked at Beta Persei, who had returned from sending the guests away. He smiled and said, "How is it? You've been out for so long. Do you miss Madam?" He. Beta Persei scratched his head and smiled embarrassedly. This cute side of him could only be shown in front of Yang Qindong. In front of others, he was the majestic Beta Persei who killed people like flies. "If you want to, then just say it. We have been out for more than 6 years. It's time to go back and take a look." When Beta Persei smiled, Yang Qindong already knew the answer and smiled as well. Over the years, Beta Persei had many women by his side when he was out on expeditions. Every time he captured a place, the powerful logistics department would organize the local women of different races to serve the 5-star army. At Beta Persei's level, the women who could be sent to his side were all beautiful women of different races. However, they were still not as good as his wife at home. "Can we really go back? This little one, I really miss my children." Beta Persei smiled. Chapter 16-19. If you miss your wife, just say so. Yang Qindong chuckled, then waved his hand and said, "Okay, tell the Black Cavalry to pack up. The ship that will take us back to Qiqian City should arrive at Lijiu Prefecture soon. We'll ferry home from there." Yang Qindong was going back to Qiqian City. He had been out for more than 6 years. This might not be a big deal for a general who had fought in all directions, but for Bugnam of Gojoseon, Yang Qindong, who was the leader of a force, it was really commendable to do this. After learning the news, Tianhu and the others naturally did not say anything. They just met Yang Qindong and promised to maintain the status quo, and then respectfully sent Yang Qindong out of Nanning Prefecture to Lijiu Prefecture. As Yang Qindong boarded the ship and headed for Qiqian City, some changes also took place in the palace of Qiqian City. In the palace, all the maids were in a hurry as they walked through the halls. The smiles on their faces were gone, and there was only some tension in their faces. If one looked carefully, one could even see some fear in the tension. Because just a few days ago, the 8th Madam's bedchamber was suddenly surrounded by a large number of palace guards, and then it was not long before Junko was ordered to be put under house arrest in the palace. Not only that, all the maids in the palace were taken away, and then there was gossip that those maids were taken to the musical house, and then there would be very miserable sounds coming from there from time to time. The palace of the 8th Madam, which was originally lively and full of vitality, became silent. Except for the 8th Madam, Junko, and Princess Yang Xian, no one was spared, and all of them disappeared in the palace. The maids in the palace were a new batch, and it was said that they were sent by the princess, Queen Hu Yen, and they were responsible for monitoring Junko's every move. Since ancient times, the harem and the previous dynasty had a close relationship, which could not be cut off at will. Because in many cases, some things in the harem also represented some kind of signal. The harem could affect the previous dynasty, and the previous dynasty could also affect the harem. The 8th madam was suddenly put under house arrest. Although the news was not publicly spread, some officials in Qiqian City still knew about it. After all, it was so big that it was impossible for people to ignore it. In the original palace of Bugnam of Gojoseon, everyone got along very well. The princess, Hu Yan, was educated and polite, and she was not a troublemaker. Although the other madams had different temperaments, most of them were born poor, and they wanted to fight in the palace, they did not have any clever means. More importantly, as the main character, Yang Qindong had not been in the Wangfu all these years. If they really wanted to fight, who would they fight for? Therefore, the harem of the harem in Bugnam of Gojoseon Earth was the most peaceful palace. Nothing had happened in all these years, but they never expected that this incident would be so big. They didn't even give a reason to the outside world. The princess consort suddenly took action, and the 8th madam was put under house arrest. Of course, the so-called not giving a reason was because it was not publicly known, but most of the officials knew what was going on. That is, the 8th madam, as a native of Japan, had pleaded with Bugnam of Gojoseon for the survival of the ninjas in her country. No matter what the reason was, at least in the eyes of outsiders, Junko had a part to play in it. But now, the ninjas suddenly rebelled. Although they failed to assassinate Yang Qindong under the rock, their betrayal was exposed. The other 2 special ninjas, Kitamura and Yui Suzuki, also disappeared from the ninja base. This sudden disappearance of them from the 5-star Army's line of sight was enough to explain everything. They were now synonymous with danger and betrayal. Not to mention, more than a month ago, Bugnam of Gojoseon's 4th brother, Yang Yang, was assassinated in Nanjing, the capital of the Southern Ming dynasty. After investigation, the 5 assassins were all ninjas. All of this proved that they were dangerous. As the 8th madam, Junko, who had pleaded for them, naturally couldn't get away from this matter. The 8th madam was placed under house arrest, which made the palace that was usually very lively became silent. In a restaurant outside the Wang mansion, 2 middle-aged men were sitting and drinking. Because of their arrival, the entire floor they were in had been cleared. To be able to possess such authority, it was rare to see such a person in Crimson City. After all, this was the place where Wunan King's royal city was located. To put it in an exaggerated manner, the number of officials here was more than half of the entire Yang clan's territory. When there were too many officials, their power was naturally not that strong. But if one knew the identity of these 2 middle-aged men, then this matter was not strange. Everything was because these 2 had the surname Yang. One was called Yang Wu, and the other was Yang Lu. That's right, these 2 were servants of the Wunan family. In the entire Yang family, there were only 5 such family retainers. They belonged to the group of people who had followed Yang Qindong from the very beginning. Now, any one of them was a person of high status and power. Many times, their words were even more influential and effective than some of the Yang faction's chiefs. Now, these 2 servants were sitting together and talking about things. How could outsiders know? Any small matter that they talked about would cause a huge commotion if it was spread out. There's no need to be so formal. Yang Wu said with a smile as he took a bite of food. I'm used to it. Ha ha ha. Yang Lu laughed indifferently. Yang Wu understood Yang Lu's style. He knew that this person was prideful, lived a luxurious life, enjoyed life, and liked power. So, Yang Wu didn't say anything. Although doing this would have a negative impact if word got out, with their status and most importantly, their relationship with their master, Yang Qindong, they really didn't care about this little bit of impact. After all, if there was really someone who accused them in front of Yang Qindong just because they had booked an entire floor of the restaurant, they would at most be warned to be careful. However, whether the person who complained would be able to withstand the combined wrath of the 2 Yang family servants, that was something that they really didn't know. Yang Wu smiled indifferently, and Yang Lu didn't take it seriously either. Back then, he was reprimanded by Yang Chendong and even sent to the southern Ming kingdom to manage the intelligence department. Wasn't it because he was prideful and treated people to meals and received gifts every day? Since this impression had already been formed, so what if he went a little overboard? Not to mention, Yang Lu had his reasons for doing this today. It was because some words could only be said in front of the two brothers. It was really not suitable to be spread out. Fifth brother, is the eighth madam really under house arrest? Did those ninjas really listen to the eighth madam's words and betray the young master? Seeing that they were almost done eating and drinking, Yang Lu began to ask questions. If such a question was asked by others, Yang Wu would not only reprimand but also warn the other party not to inquire about it. If it was serious, it was possible that he would directly order people to arrest them. But it was Yang Lu who asked, so it was a different story. He just thought that the other party was curious. Yang Wu smiled and replied, "The matter is so big, how can it be false? The eighth madam is indeed under house arrest. As for whether she is wronged or not, it still needs to be investigated. There will be results before it can be determined. But in my opinion, whether the eighth madam did it or not, I am afraid that this matter has to be blamed." "Oh? Why is that?" Yang Lu asked with great interest. "Do you still need to say it?" Yang Wu put down his chopsticks and organized his words. The ninja's rebellion is a fact. Because the eighth madam had pleaded for her, it is not too much to punish her. This is also the first rebellion that appeared in Yangxia. If it is not dealt with heavily, what if similar things happen in the future? So this time, it can only be said that the eighth madam was unlucky and hit the muzzle of the gun. I am afraid that this matter will not be dealt with properly. So it is. Yang Lu nodded as if he just understood, and then said, "Then in fifth brother's opinion, how should we solve it?" "We can't send the eighth madam to the death row, right? Who knows, the young master has already returned by boat. Everything depends on the young master's decision." Although Yang Wu said that he was in Kaisan City all year round, and even the safety of the palace was under his control, he did not dare to say anything about this kind of thing. This was the young master's family matter. As a servant, he only needed to obey and not do anything. That's right, the young master will be back soon. Everything will be done according to the young master's wishes. Yang Lu's eyes flashed with a light that no one could see, as if there was a hidden meaning in his words. But at this moment, Yang Wu obviously did not understand it. Instead, he thought of another thing. He smiled and patted Yang Lu on the shoulder and said, "Lu, this time you saved the fourth master, you have made a great contribution. This time, the young master will definitely reward you when he comes back. Maybe he will give you a good job. Have you thought of where to go?" This time, it was precisely because of Yang Lu's timely appearance that he was able to save the life of the fourth master, Yang Yanghe. With this, Yang Chendong would definitely give him a good job. This was also the reason why Yang Wu said this. Let's see how the young master arranges it. Even if he sends me back to the southern Ming dynasty, I am a servant, everything will be done according to the master's wishes. Yang Lu replied magnanimously. That's right, as a servant, we should have this kind of awareness. Come, Lu, let me give you a toast. Yang Wu smiled satisfactorily. In his eyes, his sixth brother had changed, he had become more mature. This was a good thing. They were both servants, they had trained together, they had risked their lives together. He sincerely hoped that he could become better. Yang Chendong returned to Kaisan City. He left in 1460 and came back 6 or 7 years later. After almost 7 years, he once again stepped on the new pier of Kaisan City. The accompanying Black Knights and Dragon Guards were also excited. Like Yang Chendong, they were also returning to their homeland after nearly 7 years. They were also humans and had their own feelings. Now that they could finally reunite with their families, everyone had a happy smile on their faces. Chapter 1620. According to the plan, 500 of you will follow the young master back to the palace. The rest of you, go home and take a look. Beta Persei grinned as well. Following the plan that he had discussed with Qiu Vi, Dao Shao, Ba Dao Jiang, and the others on the ship, he chuckled. This was Qiqian City, Yang Xie's headquarters. The First Army of the Cold Front had already returned after completing their mission in Yunnan Prefecture. After all, their training was still very important. Not only was there an elite army like the 1st Cold Front Division here, but there were other Cold Front divisions as well, including 2 Navy Cold Front divisions. With such a powerful force, no one would be able to harm Yang Qindong here. A team of 500 people was already considered a lot. Not to mention, Yang Wu had already brought 3,000 Longwei to the docks to welcome Yang Qindong. Beside Yang Wu stood another leader of the Longwei. He was Peng Yu, who had disappeared for a long time. He was ordered to assist Yang Wu in the security of the palace. At the same time, he was also tasked with the task of training the new Longwei. Peng Yu was also one of the veteran Black Cavalry. He had once protected Yang Qindong with Ba Dao Jiang and was deeply trusted. The 3,000 Longwei behind him was the result of his training. They were all from clean families and were the cream of the crop among the young people. Individually, they were all experts who could fight against 10 or even dozens of people. After all, the Black Cavalry would also have sacrifices. They would slowly grow old, so replacement was very important. If they were not prepared in advance, the number and quality of the Black Cavalry would be worrying. Since Peng Yu was willing to accept such an important task, it was clear that Yang Qindong trusted him. When he saluted Yang Qindong at the docks, his eyes were cold and filled with the aura of a soldier who was willing to die for his bosom friend. Not bad. Yang Qindong watched as Peng Yu walked up to him and praised him generously. He even patted Peng Yu's shoulder to encourage him. Feeling Yang Qindong's big hand patting him, Peng Yu was very excited. He straightened his body and said, "Everything is what this subordinate should do. I only hope that the 6th young master can bring me along the next expedition. I also want to go to the battlefield to kill enemies." Ha ha ha, it's approved. Yang Qindong had always appreciated the general's willingness to unleash their fighting spirit without holding back. A general with vigor might not necessarily win a battle, but if he didn't even have vigor, it would be very difficult for such a general to win a battle. City Lord Yu Qian also brought a group of civil officials to the pier to welcome the arrival of their king. Compared to the last time he saw Yu Qian, he looked even older this time. Even his head was covered with white hair. Even when he walked, his footsteps were a bit unsteady. In history, this Yu Qian, who had long passed away, had his fate completely changed because of Yang Qindong's arrival. He was now Yang Xie's helmsman. It could be said that Yang Xie could not be where he was today without Yu Qian's efforts over the years. It was only in recent years that he became older and did not do everything himself like before. Instead, he put down his power and began to train young people like Wan Shaochen. But many times, he still needed to make the final decision in the end. Yang Qindong had always been very respectful to this great hero. Without waiting for the other person to step forward, he took the initiative to walk over and extended his right arm. "Yu Qian, the wind is strong by the sea, you don't need to come over." "Huh, I'm welcoming our hero, our king." Yu Qian, who was usually reserved, cracked a rare smile and said with a chuckle. Thinking back to when the two first met, Yu Qian was filled with hostility towards Yang Qindong. He had even tried to impeach Yang Qindong. Later on, he was tricked into coming to Crimson City. He was also very unwilling, thinking that Yang Qindong was a traitor of the Great Ming Dynasty. Establishing his own faction would only weaken the strength of the Great Ming Dynasty, and he was courting his own destruction. But when he really began to understand Yang Qindong's thoughts and saw what he did, the old man slowly changed his view. Later, he began to wholeheartedly devote himself to it, truly thinking about the future of the Yang family. Now, he was completely moved by Yang Qindong's actions. He also deeply understood a principle. If the Han people wanted to become stronger, they could only do so under the leadership of Yang Qindong. Yu Qian was not a stubborn person. This could be seen from how he commanded the defense of the capital in history. The reason why many people said that he was too straightforward was because he was not greedy as an official. This made many people feel that he was out of place. Just like when he was managing the entire Xianxia, many of his actions proved that he was a flexible person. Some of his ideas and actions also proved that some people could achieve great things as long as they were given enough trust. Yu Qian was indeed a person worthy of being entrusted with great matters. Whether it was his ability or his personal integrity, there was nothing to nitpick about. Thus, when he saw that Yu Qian was old, Yang Chendong could not bear to see him like this. He took the initiative to greet the other party and said that there were many things that he would need Yu Qian to handle in the future. Yu Qian happily replied, "Your Majesty, please be at ease. The Han people have not been liberated yet. These old bones of mine can still hold on." After greeting Yu Qian, the second person in line was the young Wan Shaochen. He was in his 30s, but compared to Yu Qian, he was naturally younger. Currently, most of the matters in the city lord's residence were managed by him. In fact, after 2 terms as a provincial governor, he had indeed been tempered. Now, he was handling the entire Yangxia issue quite well. But it was only not bad. Perhaps it was because of his background. Wan Shaochen was not muddle-headed on major matters, but he was always willing to stick to the small matters. In terms of ability and the overall situation, he was naturally far inferior to Yu Qian. This time, Yang Chendong returned to Qixin City to resolve this matter. Without Yu Qian to manage the specific matters, Yang Chendong decided to set up a cabinet. In the future, the major matters of Yangxia would be handled by the cabinet. "You are also not bad, but you need to continue to work hard." Yang Chendong looked at Wan Shaochen with a smile, as if he was praising him, but also as if he was reminding him. As soon as these words were said, Wan Shaochen's face immediately became a little ugly. He knew that his recent actions were somewhat inappropriate, and if he said that he had no selfishness in this matter, he was afraid that he would not believe it. This matter was referring to the matter of the 8th Madam Junko. Because of the ninja rebellion, Junko was put under house arrest by the imperial concubine Huyen. This matter was a state matter, and it was also Yang Chendong's family matter. If Yu Qian expressed some opinions on this matter, it was not a big deal. After all, he was not qualified to do so. But the bad thing was that Yu Qian had not expressed his opinion, or he did not intend to express his opinion at all, but Wan Shaochen expressed his opinion, and that was, he questioned the actions of the imperial concubine Huyen. As everyone knew, Wan Shaochen's sister was Yang Chendong's 6th Madam Wan Xiaoyu. And the 6th Madam also gave birth to a son for Yang Chendong, named Yang Cheng. According to the teachers of several princes, this Yang Cheng was very smart. Yang Chendong's son was also very smart, his mother was also favored by the king, and his uncle was the deputy city lord. In fact, he was the future city lord candidate. When all these things were placed on one person, it was impossible not to think too much about it. Just like in the people, there were many people talking about it. The eldest Prince Yang Bo was very good, but the youngest Prince Yang Cheng was also very smart, and also had the opportunity to inherit Yang Chendong's position. No one knew who spread this rumor, but as time passed, it became more and more intense. At this moment, Wan Xiaoli, as the deputy city lord, privately expressed his disapproval of the imperial concubine Huyan's approach to the 8th Madam. This matter spread out, and it was natural to imagine what the people below would think. Those who did not know, only thought that Wan Shaochen was doing business. But those who knew some of the details were wondering if Wan Shaochen wanted to stand up for his sister, and also for his nephew to inherit the position. This matter inevitably spread to Yang Chendong's ears. Just when Beta Persei asked if there was a need to clarify that it was Yang Chendong's idea to put the 8th Madam under house arrest, he shook his head. He knew that there was no smoke without fire, and this was a good opportunity to test Wan Shaochen. Yang Chendong was in the prime of his life, and he really did not think too much about the so-called successor. If it wasn't for the fact that this trip to Southern Cloud Manor was somewhat risky, he wouldn't have been able to establish the position of the successor so quickly. Because he had confidence in himself and most of the leaders of Yangxia, Yang Chendong did not make a sound, but just watched silently. he wanted to see who else would speak out on this matter. Sure enough, after Wuxia Xianxia spoke out, there were many officials who expressed their dissatisfaction with the imperial concubine Hu Yan in private or on certain occasions. These people were all recorded one by the Long Wei led by Peng Yu, and then investigated one by one. Because he knew that there was a traitor, Yang Qindong did not use any outsiders for this matter, and only arranged for Long Wei to do it. Under such caution, there was really no news, but it also let more people jump out unknowingly. Yang Qindong's sentence just now that she still needed to work hard was an indirect reminder to Wuxia Xianxia that there were some things that she still did not do enough. Of course, if the dragon guards hadn't investigated and found out that Wuxia Xianxia didn't want to stand up for his sister or his nephew, Yang Cheng, and was just expressing his opinion from the bottom of his heart, and those who followed him were mostly speaking with a matter-of-fact attitude. If they didn't have any connections, this time it wouldn't be a warning, but a direct arrest. Where there were people, there was Jianghu. There were conflicts in Jianghu. Yang Qindong had long known that this was unavoidable, especially when Yang Xie's plate was so big, and there were so many officials, and the benefits were so great that countless people would be jealous. For their own selfish interests, it was inevitable that they would do something excessive. Chapter 1621. But as long as these people did not cross the red line, although Yang Qindong would punish them, he would not kill them. After all, he had to give people a chance to correct their mistakes, right? But if they really stepped on the red line, for example, they wanted to rely on their own strength to connect more people and shake the position of the air, then Yang Qindong would never let them off easily. Even if this person had great merits, it could not make up for such a mistake. Wuxia Xianxia did not cross the red line, Yang Qindong just reminded him. But even so, it made Wuxia Xianxia's face change greatly, and his heart woke up. In fact, after saying these words that day, he regretted it a little. Afterwards, he was reprimanded by his sister, Wan Xiaoyu. This was the first time his sister was angry with him in all these years. At that time, Wuxia Xianxia did not think that he had done anything wrong. After hearing his sister's analysis, he knew that his behavior could easily lead to misunderstandings. Especially when some of the officials who had a good relationship with him also expressed their opinions afterwards, he knew that his influence was great and the consequences of his words and actions. Fortunately, Wan Xiaoyu was really a smart woman. In her words, she was already very satisfied that the Wan family could go from a poor family that could not even solve the problem of food and clothing to today. Big Brother, Wan Xiaoyu's private name for Yang Qindong, had already given too much to the Wan family. But Big Brother could give, but the Wan family could not accept. Otherwise, they would not know what was good for them. If they did not do well, they would lose everything they had now. Wan Xiaoyu also said that Hu Yan had already done very well as the legal wife and had never had the intention to bully her sisters. Moreover, Hu Yan was Big Brother's first woman and also the woman he valued the most. No matter what she did, whether it was right or wrong, only Big Brother could say it. No one else had such authority. It could be said that Wan Xiaoyu's love for Yang Qindong was absolutely from the bones. It was because of this that she was willing to use her life to defend Yang Qindong's dignity. If someone wanted to offend, even if it was her own brother, she would not be rude. Brother, now that I have Yang, I am already very satisfied. It is the best thing that Yang can grow up happily and healthily. Let's not casually add more burdens to him, okay? That may not be what he wants. In the face of his lovely sister's request, what else could Wuxia Xianxia say? Not to mention that he didn't have such a strong desire to support his nephew. After all, their Wan family had just risen and lived a good life for a few days. Even if he did, he could dispel it after listening to Yi Qingyu's words. This was a private conversation between the two siblings. Yang Qindong did not know about it. Even the resourceful Long Wei could not find out about this. However, based on Yang Qindong's understanding of Wan Xiaoyu, he still remembered the kindness in her eyes when they first met. Yang Qindong firmly believed that his Xiaoyu was not a woman who fought for power and profit. This should be her nature. There were other officials present at the dock. Yang Chendong shook hands with them one by one and chatted with them for a while. Then, a tram with wires hanging from its head drove over. Over the years, since the first battery-powered machine, battery-powered vehicles began to be used vigorously, but they could only be used to make some small vehicles such as motorcycles. However, the development of trams began to accelerate after they had the wires on the tracks. Now, a 19-seater long car could be built. It was said that a 35-seater longer car would also be trialed successfully. After getting on the tram, Yang Chendong said goodbye to everyone and went straight to the palace. He couldn't help but feel nervous. He still remembered that when he came back last time, his eldest son, Yang Bo, didn't dare to recognize him. From this point of view, he was somewhat unfit as a father. And now, Yang Chendong, who already had many children, did not grow up with his children. Thinking about whether his children would recognize him when they saw him, whether they would call him father, or whether they would simply reject him, he actually felt a little uneasy in his heart. The tram moved and finally came to the palace. Here, Hu Yan had been waiting here for a long time with a group of princesses and children. When they saw a group of black cavalry dragon guards protecting a tram in the distance, everyone couldn't help but stand up straighter. The tram stopped, and Yang Chendong was the first to step out of the tram. It only stopped for about 2 or 3 breaths of time, and his eldest daughter, Lele, trotted all the way to him. As the eldest daughter, Lele was the king of the children. She bragged more than once about how close she was to her father in front of her younger brothers and sisters. In this matter, Yang Bo had some right to speak, but he thought that he was a man and shouldn't be so pretentious, so most of the time, he didn't speak, which allowed Lele to be in the limelight. Now that Yang Chendong finally appeared, among the many children, the word father seemed to only appear in the mouth of others. Although their mother had taught them many times, the moment they really saw Yang Chendong, they were still a little scared and at a loss. Only Lele rushed over recklessly. Lele, who was already 14 years old, had already grown into a big girl. She had inherited the common good points of Yang Chendong and Xiao Yin, and was very beautiful. When she rushed into Yang Chendong's arms, Bugnam of Gojoseon, who had faced 30,000 cavalrymen alone on the battlefield without batting an eyelid, was moved. He quickly opened his arms and hugged Lele. Then, he quickly spun a few rounds, causing Lele in his arms to laugh non-stop. "Father, Lele missed you." Lying in Yang Chendong's arms, Lele didn't forget to act coquettishly. Father also missed Lele. Yang Chendong said from the bottom of his heart. Then father, is Lele pretty? Looking at Lele's expectant eyes that flickered as if they could speak, Yang Chendong laughed loudly and played along. Of course Lele is pretty. Lele is the prettiest girl in the world. Hee, father said so. Lele is the prettiest girl in the world. Lele laughed happily. Then, she didn't forget to turn around to look at her younger brothers and sisters, especially her younger sisters, who seemed to be showing off something. Perhaps it was because of her bloodline, or perhaps it was because of a child's desire to compare, but Lele's performance really stimulated the other young princesses. For example, the second princess, Yang Nua, 4th Madame Dong Xiangxiang's daughter, the third princess, Yang Ting, 5th Madame Tuoya's daughter, and the 5th princess, Yang Lin, 5th Madame Hu Yan's daughter, who was also 6 years old, immediately left their mother's arms and ran towards Yang Chendong. They seemed to want to prove themselves, to prove that they were the prettiest and cutest girls in the world. Seeing his 3 daughters running towards him, Yang Chendong quickly stopped spinning and put Lele down. But then, Lele's voice rang in his ears. Father, I'm amazing, right? Look at how my younger sisters want to get close to you so quickly. Lele is so smart. Yang Chendong laughed and sighed in his heart. A 14-year-old girl already knew how to manipulate people's hearts. He had to admit that children born in the royal family matured faster than children born in ordinary families. Yang Chendong's arms were long enough, his arms were big enough, and he had enough strength. With his 3 daughters in his arms, he didn't feel pressured at all. On the contrary, the 3 girls were at ease in his arms. The mischievous Yang Chendong even dared to stretch out her small hand to grab Yang Chendong's beard. When she realized that this father she met for the first time not only wasn't angry, but also intentionally made a funny face, she giggled and then wanted to repeat her actions. If not for Hu Yan's quick reflexes, Yang Chendong's beard would have been pulled out in a short while. The madams took over their respective daughters. Next, it was time for the boys to greet each other. The first to bear the brunt was the eldest son, Yang Bo. He, who was already 11 years old, appeared to be very calm. Although he also wanted to be close to his father like sister Lele, he knew that he was a boy, and also the eldest son. It was not appropriate to do so. So when he saw Yang Chendong in front of him, he suppressed his excitement and stood there quietly. He bowed and said, "Child Yang Bo greets father." Yang Chendong was very satisfied with Yang Bo's calmness. Although he wanted his children to play more when they were young, since they were his children, they had to bear too much pressure. It was better for them to be mature and stable earlier. Bo, you've grown taller and stronger. Very good. Father is very pleased. With this praise, Yang Bo's small eyes began to redden. Ever since he knew what it meant to be the successor, how powerful Yang Xia was, and how this position, this great responsibility, and this heavy burden fell on his shoulders, he became more hard-working than before. He woke up early and worked late every day to learn literature and martial arts. Now that he had finally received his father's approval, compared to this, all his previous efforts were worth it. Although Yang Bo was only 11 years old, he had experienced more hardships than other children his age. When he was 3 years old, he entered the preschool of the Yang Family Academy to learn how to read and do math. When he was 5 years old, he entered primary school and began a deeper level of cultural studies. When he was 8 years old, he joined the children's regiment and began basic physical training. This year, when he was 11 years old, he entered secondary school to learn more cultural knowledge. Next year, he was preparing to enter the youth regiment from the children's regiment, so he began to experience real training to deal with local security. This was what he had to face and pay as a prince. In ancient times, it was more difficult to be a prince. Some even had to train their ability to be independent when they were 3 or 4 years old. They had to stay away from their parents and live outside. Every day, they had to wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning to study. Even so, they might not be able to stand out from the other princes. This was because in the end, it still depended on talent, how much the emperor liked you, and how much luck you had. Otherwise, it would be very difficult to ascend to the throne. Chapter 1622. On this point, Yang Bo was at least lucky. He was Yang Chendong's eldest son, and his mother was the first consort, Hu Yan. As long as there were no major problems, his chances of inheriting the throne were the highest. Of course, all of this was based on his talent, and he had worked hard. It was precisely because he knew all of this that although it was a little bitter now, Yang Bo had never rejected it. On the contrary, he would do his best to do everything that was arranged for him. Sometimes, even his mother, Hu Yan, would feel sorry for him. But she was unable to dissuade him. This was his life, and he should pay the price. Therefore, to be able to become a great person, it was not as simple as luck. Most of them had really put in a lot of effort. Other than a few children with heaven-defying luck, most of the time, it depended on how much effort they put in to obtain the benefits. Yang Bo had always been working hard. He wanted to follow in his father's footsteps. He wanted to prove himself. He wanted to be able to make Yang Chendong proud of him one day. In the face of such an ambitious child, Yang Chendong was of course very happy and gratified, and appropriate praise was needed. And as long as he did not overdo it and did not let the child grow arrogant, there would not be any problems. Instead, it would make the child work even harder. He patted Yang Bo's shoulder, and looked at him as if he was already an adult, or a warrior. Sure enough, it made Yang Bo very excited. Just based on that pat, that kind of recognition, his years of hard work had not been in vain. After Yang Bo, it was Yang Chang's second son, Wan Xiaoyu's son, Yang Jun's third son, third Madame Xiao Yushue's son, and Yang Zhao's fourth son, seventh Madame Su Man, her son. The three boys were the same age, and there was not much difference in height. This was also the first time the three children had seen their father in a real sense. Before, they had only seen him in portraits, and even more impressions were formed from the discussions of others. Now that they finally saw the real person, the three children who were only 6 years old were more or less reserved. But under the encouragement of their mothers, they still called out timidly, "Greetings, father." "Huh, greetings." Yang Qindong laughed heartily as he squatted down. Then, he touched the faces of his three sons, and handed over a delicate toy water gun to the three boys. This was the first product of the newly established toy factory in Crimson City that was about to go offline. As Yang Xia continued to grow stronger and richer, she was no longer satisfied with the standard of living. Instead, she began to pursue more spiritual things. The demand for cosmetics for women, bicycles for men, and even more advanced electric cars and steam cars, as well as toys for boys and dolls for girls, was also increasing. Assets needed to flow in order to better stimulate the market. Only when everyone was brave enough to spend could the economy develop more smoothly and rapidly. When his subordinates sent the investigation results to Yang Qindong, he waved his brush and many more factories appeared in Crimson City. It was only because the manufacturers of dolls had yet to produce products. After all, Yang Qindong's requirements for these things were still very high. At the very least, the dolls not only had to be sturdy and good-looking, but also couldn't have any shoddy materials. That was why they had yet to produce a finished product. But one could imagine that once a finished product was produced, the princess would definitely be the first to receive it. As for Yang Bo, Yang Qindong didn't intend to give him these things to play with. He had already grown up. Yang Qindong also promised that when he reached 14 years old, which was the time when the ancients came of age, he would personally give him an exquisite handgun. For this reason, Yang Bo was also looking forward to that day. After receiving the water gun, Yang Cheng and the others were all excited. If it wasn't for the presence of their father and mother, they would have already gone to play with it. At this time, Yang Qindong finally had time to greet his wives. In public, ignoring the shocked gazes of others, Yang Qindong first hugged the first consort, Hu Yan, making her blush. Next, Qiao Yin, Lady Shui, Lady Xiang, and the others hugged him one by one. Yang Qindong naturally understood the principle of worrying about the lack of equality. He had to treat everyone equally. Otherwise, if he hugged someone less, it was inevitable that others would interpret it in various ways. Who knew how big of a wave it would cause? At this moment, with Yang Qindong's status, his every move would often attract all kinds of guesses. He really had to be careful. Yang Qindong finally stepped into the palace and participated in the welcoming banquet prepared for him by the first madam, Hu Yan. For a moment, the palace became lively again, as if the incident with the eighth madam didn't happen. Yang Qindong's return caused the entire palace to become festive and lively. However, in one of the chambers in the palace, a woman was sitting on the edge of the bed with a cute girl in her arms. The woman's figure was very good, and her skin was very white. If you looked closer, you would see that she had a beautiful face. The only flaw was that her eyes were a little red and swollen. If you looked carefully, you could see 2 streaks of tears slowly flowing down from the corners of her eyes. She was the 8th Madam, Junko. Although she was a princess of the Japanese Empire, there had always been a tradition in the Japanese Empire that the husband was the leader, and the husband was the sky. It was said that once a woman got married, she had to put her husband first and foremost. Junko was no exception to this. Since she married Yang Qindong, she really regarded him as the sky. Especially after Yang Qindong helped her avenge her father, mother, and brother, her heart was only left with Yang Qindong. It wasn't until after she gave birth to little Yang Qindong in her arms that she found a new comfort in life when Yang Qindong wasn't around. She usually accompanied little Yang Qindong as she grew up, and then taught her what she had learned in the Japanese Empire. The rest of the time, she waited for news of her king, Yang Qindong, and looked forward to his return. Such a woman didn't care about anything in the world, let alone the Japanese ninjas. She didn't even know where they went. But now, the ninja first assassinated Yang Qindong, and then assassinated Master Yang Si, and almost succeeded. After the incident, Junko, who had spoken for the ninja, was implicated and put under house arrest in the palace. All the personal maids were sent away, and at this moment, there were only some new maids and her precious daughter, little Yang Xian, who she didn't know. Even so, Junko never gave up. At this point, it had to be said that this was related to Junko's education since childhood. She was full of tenacity and believed in her innocence. She was waiting for the return of Yang Qindong. She believed that on that day, her identity would be revealed. And today, Yang Qindong returned. Junko also deliberately dressed up, because according to the rules, she could welcome her king at the gate of the palace. No matter what, she was still the 8th wife of Bugnam of Gojoseon, and this identity hasn't been erased. When she finished preparing everything and dressed her daughter, little Yang Xian, beautifully, she suddenly received word from Hu Yan that there was no need for her to attend the welcoming ceremony, and that it would be better for her to reflect on her mistakes in her chambers. At this moment, Junko couldn't stop her tears from flowing. But she didn't resist, because she knew that Hu Yan, as the legal wife, had the power in the entire palace. This sister of hers didn't express her opinion on ordinary matters, but once she did, no one could doubt her authority. With a face full of disappointment, Junko returned to the palace. Then, Junko found that the way the maids looked at her changed, from disrespectful to somewhat disdainful, especially the head maid sent by the higher-ups, Cui Xiu, who directly showed a look of disdain in her eyes. Every princess has a personal maid, such maids generally follow them for the longest time, and they are also the ones who know their hearts the best. Usually, they also serve as mentors. For example, the head maid of Junko was Miko, the former spy of the CIA, who later broke into the palace of the Japanese Empire and saved Junko. Because they had gone through life and death together, Miko knew Junko very well, and some things were properly arranged, which made her very satisfied. But since the accident, Miko was also taken away, and no one knew where she went. In exchange, Cui Xiu, the female head maid who looked good, but there was always a flash of fierceness in her eyes, which made people dislike her. It was said that she was recommended by Brother Yang. It was said that Cui Xiu used to be a spy of the CIA, but because of an injury, it was not so convenient for her to move around, so she asked for a job in the palace. Now, she didn't know what kind of luck she had, but she was valued by Brother Yang and became the head maid of her own palace. Perhaps it was because everyone knew that she was recommended by Brother Yang, so everyone in the palace was very respectful, so Cui Xiu felt a little bit like a servant bullying the master, and now she was giving Junko a bad attitude. If it were the side concubine of Class 1, she would have already made a scene, or at least let more people know what happened to her. But Junko didn't. Instead, she still did what she should do, as if nothing had happened. The only thing was that she was not as willing to speak as before. All this was because Junko believed in Yang Qindong, believed in her king, and believed that her wise king would investigate everything clearly and give her justice. Because of this, no matter what kind of attitude Cui Xiu had towards her, she didn't say a word. She just sat by the bed holding little Yang Xian, motionless. The sky gradually darkened, and the banquet in the palace was also coming to an end. Yang Qindong seemed to have drunk a little too much because he was happy. With the help of concubine Hu Yan, he went to concubine's palace. The banquet naturally ended, and the other side concubines also returned to their respective places with their maids. The palace became quiet again. Chapter 1623. It had been proven that Yang Qindong didn't send anyone to summon Junko. It was as if the 8th wife didn't exist. This made the maids, who originally had hope, become disappointed. Many of them began to look at Junko with a trace of contempt like Cui Xiu. People were like this. When you were in power, even a fart would be fragrant. On the contrary, when you lost power, no matter how well you did, you wouldn't hear a word of encouragement or praise. This was especially true in the harem. A concubine who lost power often lived worse than an ordinary maid. This was the reality. When the sky was completely dark, Cui Xiu left with a complacent look. It was said that fifth brother Yang was looking for her. Looking at her swaying butt and leaving with a complacent look after carefully dressing up, many maids couldn't help but curse her in their hearts, but on the surface, they still respectfully watched her leave. When the foreman was gone, the maids' hearts were scattered. In addition, a few kind-hearted maids came to greet Junko and asked if she needed them to help make the bed. After being refused, the huge palace quickly quieted down. In the night, a breeze blew from time to time, blowing the red candles and shaking them constantly. In the shadow of the red candles, Junko sat there holding little Yang Xian who had fallen asleep. Her eyes were empty and powerless. At this moment, Junko was very unwilling. She couldn't understand why Yang Chendong didn't care about her. She had to admit that when Yang Chendong married her, it had a certain relationship with the political situation of the Japanese Empire. For example, after Yang Chendong became the son-in-law of the royal family, it played a great role in Yang Xie's takeover of the entire Japanese Empire. But it was undeniable that Junko could also feel that Yang Chendong still had feelings for her. The two first met in the capital of Baiming, and then spent 3 years together in the Yang Family Academy, so the two had a foundation of feelings. In the beginning, there was some estrangement because they worked for different masters. But now, Neon had become a small Neon province and a member of Yang's faction. Everyone was on the same side. This kind of estrangement should also disappear. But why did Yang Chendong come back and not care about her? Did he also think that the ninja assassination had something to do with her? Junko was a woman, but now she had another identity, a mother with a daughter. Her heart only cared about Yang Chendong. She had long forgotten about restoring the original prosperity of the Japanese Empire. With the current strength of Yang Xie, if the Japanese Empire, it would be self-destruction. Moreover, over the years, the population had been constantly moving out. There were probably not many Neon people left in their homeland. How could they talk about independence? This was a fact that everyone could see, so why didn't Yang Chendong see it? If he had seen it, why didn't he ask about it when he realized that she wasn't in the welcoming party or at the welcoming banquet? Or was it because he was tired of her? Or was it because he had used her? Now was the time to draw a line. Junko couldn't figure it out. The more she thought about it, the more she thought about it. The more she thought about it, the more she thought about it. Her mind was full of bits and pieces of her time with Yang Chendong. Tears unconsciously flowed down her cheeks and fell on little Yang Xian who was sleeping soundly. Hey, it's fine if you don't care about your body, but why do you have to drop your tears on Xian? Aren't you afraid of waking her up? Let me tell you, children need to get enough sleep, so they can grow more cute and beautiful. A voice suddenly sounded beside her, but Junko, who was in her own world, didn't seem to notice it. She thought that she was hallucinating, because she could hear that it was the voice of the king that she had been thinking about day and night. Haha. After a bitter laugh, Junko muttered to herself, even the king doesn't care about me, why should I care about myself? Nonsense, who said that this king doesn't care about you? The voice rang in her ears again, but this time, it was so clear and real that Junko couldn't help but turn around. Then, she saw Yang Chendong standing beside her, full of energy and vigor. If it was only Yang Chendong who appeared, Junko might have thought that it was because she missed him. But when she saw that in addition to Yang Chendong, even consort Hu Yen was standing beside him, she knew that this was definitely not an illusion. Ah! My king! Junko woke up and was about to stand up and salute. No need, don't wake little Xian up. Yang Chendong was already prepared, so he reached out his right hand and gently pressed down on her. After feeling the warmth from his big hand, Junko felt that it was real. At that moment, she couldn't stop her tears from rushing out. The king finally came to see her. You guys talk first, I'll take little Xian away first. Hu Yen, who was standing on the side, showed a very kind look, then reached out and gently took Yang Xian, then turned and went to the bedroom where little Yang Xian was resting. Just outside the bedroom, Hu Yan's head maid, little Qing, was standing outside with some other maids, looking around vigilantly. Although they didn't know why the king and consort wanted to visit the 8th madam's bedroom in the middle of the night, they knew that what happened tonight couldn't be known to outsiders. Otherwise, there wouldn't be Long Wei hiding in the dark outside the bedroom. Fortunately, the 8th madam had lost her power, so all the maids had gone to rest, and no one was waiting in front of her. As long as some ecstasy powder was blown into the room of these maids, they would be able to sleep until dawn, which saved a lot of trouble. On the side of the bed, Yang Qindong was hugging Junko, and the two were sitting quietly. After gradually adapting to the temperature of Yang Qindong's body, Junko knew that she had to say something, otherwise she was really worried that if she didn't say something, there would be no chance for her to say it. King, about ninja, well, don't say it, I already know, this matter can't have anything to do with you, this king has already known it. But now I still need your cooperation, I will leave before dawn, and then everything will be the same as yesterday. You also need to calm down for a while, are you willing to cooperate with me? By the way, Tomiko and the others are living very well, they are now in a very safe place, you can rest assured. After this matter, they will come back and serve you again. The amount of information in these words was a bit too much, Junko didn't understand it for a while. But no matter what, she was still the princess of the royal family, after a while, she digested most of it. Although Junko didn't know what was going on, she knew that this was a trap, and she was the bait. Thinking that she could do something for Yang Qindong, no matter how big the training was, it was not a big deal. Junko immediately said, King, please rest assured, Junko has no complaints, and will cooperate well. Junko is the girl who has the best view of the overall situation. Well, it's already late, can we rest? Yang Hodong first praised with a smile, then said with a hint of temptation in his voice. Yang Qindong knew that if he didn't do something, he wouldn't be able to completely eliminate the estrangement in Junko's heart. So, he decided to sleep with Junko. Ah. Hearing this, Junko's eyes were full of affection, and her face was red. She wanted to say, didn't King just come out from the madam's place? But thinking of Yang Qindong's strong body, she didn't say anything, but just nodded shyly. Ha ha ha. With laughter, Yang Qindong and Junko slowly fell down. Then, the gauze was slowly put down. What a garden full of spring, 12,000 words are omitted here. In a courtyard with 4 entrances outside the palace. The sky slowly brightened, the servant Yang Wu put on his clothes and walked into the courtyard. After practicing a set of martial arts, Cui Xiu came out of the room. Her face was flushed, and it was obvious that she was full. She was holding a basin of warm water in front of Yang Wu. Brother Wu, you must be sweating, come, wash your face. Looking at the towel handed by Cui Xiu, Yang Wu smiled, then pinched her flushed face, and took the towel and began to wipe his face. While Yang Wu was wiping his face, Cui Xiu, asked casually, Brother Wu, the 6th young master is back, should I continue to work at the madam's place? Suddenly putting down the towel, Yang Wu's face was a little cold. Xiu, I'll warn you again, you can only be called king, you can't even call him king. How can you call him the 6th young master? In the entire Yangxia, except for a few servants who can call Yang Qindong young master, those who are closer to him can call him the 6th young master, and those who are farther away can call him king, but most people have to call him king. This is the rule, no one can question or break the rule. Yang Wu's face changed, and Cui Xiu, was also shocked. Then, she whispered, yes, Xiu, overstepped. Seeing that Cui Xiu's attitude was good, Yang Wu decided to let her go. Then, he said, the young master is back, but he didn't go to see the 8th madam, so you should do what you should do. But remember, master and servant, no matter whether the 8th madam is guilty or not, only the young master can make the decision. As servants, we can't do anything that goes against the master, otherwise the consequences will be very serious, understand? Yes, Xiu understands. Cui Xiu quickly agreed. Well, it's getting late, you should go back to the palace. Although our relationship is here, and others won't say anything publicly, we still have to be self-disciplined. Chapter 1624. Yes, I'll go back to the palace now. Cui Xiu quickly bowed and then stepped out of the small courtyard. After leaving the small courtyard, she suddenly looked back and said in her heart, when you were sleeping with me, you were so anxious. Now that you're done, you want me to go back and serve others. Jianghu, you're just like this. Just wait until my master is promoted. At that time, I will definitely trample you under my feet and see your face. With a trace of anger, Cui Xiu returned to the palace and went to the 8th madam's bedroom. Along the way, the maids who saw her hurriedly saluted, which made her involuntarily raise her head. No matter what, she was half the master here, which gave her a sense of superiority. Until she walked into the bedroom, she saw Junko sitting in front of the mirror and dressing up. In particular, she noticed that Junko's mental state was very good, and she seemed to have a smile on her face. This made Cui Xiu even more puzzled. She could only snort and turn around to find a room to catch up on her sleep. Here, Cui Xiu was half the master. No one could control what she wanted to do. What Cui Xiu didn't know was that as soon as she left, Yang Lu came to Yang Wu's small courtyard. As Yang Qindong's servants, after the young master returned, they had to go together to greet him and wait for orders. There were only 5 of them in the Yang family. Even if Tiger's mane was included, there were only 6 people. It was because they were talented that they showed their noble status. But this kind of nobility was only in front of others. In front of Yang Qindong, they were still servants. You're here, then let's go. Yang Wu saw Yang Lu appear and smiled. Let's go, 5th brother. Yang Lu also smiled. But what he didn't notice was the forced and painful smile in Yang Wu's eyes. As the guard of Crimson City, Yang Wu naturally had his strengths to be chosen here. Although no one said anything, he had a bad feeling about this. Yang Qindong woke up early in the morning and had breakfast in Hu Yan's princess consort's palace. He even held little Yang Lin and fed her a few mouthfuls of food before leaving with a satisfied laugh. When he saw that Beta Persei, Yang Wu, and Yang Lu were already standing in the courtyard waiting for him, he waved his hand. Let's go to the city lord's mansion. The so-called city lord's mansion had already become a 9-story building. However, the real office space was only on the bottom 8 floors. The 9th floor was reserved for Yang Qindong. This was what the ancients called the 9 and 5 Supremes. Not everyone could use the 9th floor. Outside the city lord's mansion, Yu Qian, who had already received the news, was waiting here with Wan Shaochen and the others. Each of them had a look of anticipation on their faces. Because according to the past habit, every time the 6th young master appeared here, he would give very important pointers. Often, after these pointers became reality, the strength of the entire Yang Xia would unknowingly rise to a new level. Everyone was waiting for Yang Qindong to appear and for his new instructions. This time, Yang Qindong did indeed have new instructions, and that was to establish a cabinet. Yang Xia was getting stronger and stronger, his territory was getting bigger and bigger, and there were more and more things to do. It was already insufficient to rely on the city lord's mansion to solve all the problems, so the cabinet came into being. They would help share some of the important things and make important decisions. Unlike the cabinet system of the Great Ming Dynasty, Yang Xia's cabinet had a total of 9 people. Usually, everyone was in charge of something. Once there was a problem that could not be solved, the 9 people would vote according to the principle of the minority obeying the majority to make the final decision. If there was an abstention vote, and the result was an equal vote, then Yang Qindong would make the decision. Most of the time, Yang Qindong would not interfere too much with the cabinet's affairs. In order to avoid a situation where the cabinet had too much control, the management of the military was not within the scope of internal discussion. The military was independent, and even the logistics were the same. This was the only way to ensure that even if the cabinet was controlled by someone else in the future, the military would still be in the hands of the royal family. This would ensure that the royal family could turn the situation around, and it would be as easy as flipping a hand. Yang Qindong sat in the large conference room of the city lord's mansion. When he announced this decision face to face, the officials below were silent. Many of them showed excitement in their eyes. In fact, this was understandable. When Yang Qindong was not there, the final decision of Yang Xie's affairs was in the hands of the city lord's mansion, which was equivalent to being in the hands of the city lord. Yu Qian was worthy of being the boss. However, because this person was wholeheartedly impartial and never showed favoritism, there were many things that people wanted to intervene in, but they could not have the right to speak. Now, the cabinet system was implemented, which was equivalent to decentralizing the power in Yu Qian's hands. So, they had more opportunities to intervene in government affairs. Of course, everyone was happy. Now, these people were thinking about who would be the first batch of people to enter the cabinet. Naturally, the low-ranking people did not think much about it, but they hoped that the officials they were familiar with could enter the cabinet. This was equivalent to having a strong backer. Among the people present, the one who was most disappointed was Luan Shaochen. As the first deputy city lord, he was going to take over from city lord Yu Qian, but now that the cabinet system was introduced, his power would be greatly dispersed. For a moment, Luan Shaochen couldn't help but think of his private statement on the matter of the 8th madam. Was it because of this that it provoked the dissatisfaction of the 6th young master, so the cabinet system was introduced? This was Luan Shaochen's thinking too much. Yang Qindong had thought about the cabinet system for a long time. He was using the political system of later generations as a reference. And now, he thought that the time was ripe to establish a cabinet. As for the previous system of the city lord's mansion, it was because Yu Qian was the city lord. Yang Qindong was very assured of this person's ability and integrity. But now it was different. Yu Qian was old and could not do everything by himself. Luan Xiaoli was too young and could be easily used by people with ulterior motives. Now was the time to introduce the cabinet system. Not only that, the appearance of the cabinet system was also a great advantage for the next conquest of the North and South Ming dynasty. It was because of this that today's meeting was held. Not to mention that Luan Shaochen was a little disappointed. Yu Qian, on the other hand, was indifferent. Yu Qian was a person with a high evaluation in history. There was a natural reason for that. This was a person who truly cared about the people. In his opinion, as long as the people lived a prosperous life, it was the top priority. As for whether he would offend anyone in the process, it was not a problem that he needed to consider. Now, the emergence of the cabinet system represented a more mature sign of Yang Xie. How could he refuse? Not to mention that he also knew that he was old and could not stay in the position of the city lord's mansion for long, so naturally, there was no sense of loss. Then again, no matter what the people below thought. This matter was decided by Yang Qindong, so it was useless for others to doubt it. This was not a democratic era, but a period of imperial power. As the king and founder of the Yang faction, as long as Yang Qindong decided on something, the others would have to obey his orders. Well, next, I will announce the first batch of people to join the cabinet. Seeing that the discussion below gradually became quiet, Yang Qindong reached out and took a piece of paper with a list of names recorded on it. In an instant, the meeting became quiet. At this moment, it was most appropriate to describe it as a pin-drop silence. In the quiet big conference room, only Yang Qindong's unusually calm voice sounded. Cabinet Leader Yu Qian. The first name was read out, but it did not cause any waves because everyone thought that this was a normal thing. Next, Yang Qindong paused and continued to read, Luan Shaochen. Luan Shaochen, who was sitting there and still a little nervous, couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief after hearing his name. He was really a little nervous because he was worried that his previous actions had caused the dissatisfaction of the 6th young master. If so, even if he was not a cabinet member, it was normal. If that was the case, it meant that he was completely removed from the ranks of the high-level cadres. the appearance of Wuan Xiaoqian's name did not cause any surprise. After all, everyone could see it. Bugnam of Gojoseon has been deliberately training his brother-in-law. In addition, he was the first deputy city lord, the first person after Yu Qian. It was normal for him to appear on the list. After Wuan Xiaoqian, Yang Qindong opened his mouth and read out the third name. Shen Yu. As soon as this name came out, it was no longer quiet. There were more or less whispers and discussions. Shen Yu, chief of the supervision department. In the many years since he took office, he has made contributions, but they were not very big. The main thing was that he had enough qualifications. This person joined the Yangxia with Yu Qian. It has been more than 10 years. It was precisely because of his seniority that although the people below had some discussions, no one would say anything more. On the contrary, Shen Yu himself was very excited at this moment. After his name was called, he got up and walked straight to the rostrum like Yu Qian and Wuan Xiaoqian. Shen Yu's age was not young. He was only 3 years younger than Yu Qian. But who says that you don't have ambition when you're old? It was good to be able to exert their remaining energy. Presumably, it was not only Shen Yu who thought this way. Many old chiefs of various departments would also think this way. Even in the present day, this kind of thinking was still mainstream. After Shen Yu, Yang Qindong called out Wu Qian's name. Wu Qian, chief of the anti-corruption department. His name and his name could be said to complement each other. Wu Qian really had no money. Moreover, this person was impartial, as if Bao Gong had been reborn. For the sake of his work, he even sent his wife and assistant to prison. Such a person was like an insurmountable mountain to those officials who had ulterior motives. His addition to the cabinet also made many people's hearts ache. With this point, they had to put away any ulterior motives they had before. Chapter 1625. Wu Qian, whose name was called, didn't have any excitement. He stood up indifferently. As far as he was concerned, whether he joined the cabinet or not, he would still continue to work. It was just that joining the cabinet meant that Yang Qindong trusted him more, which made him a little excited. Just like Yu Qian, the longer he followed Yang Qindong, the more he saw Yang Xia's rapid changes, and the more he was influenced by Yang Qindong's personality. To be recognized by someone he admired was a happy thing no matter how he looked at it. After Wu Qian, Yang Qindong called the fifth name, Long Tainan. This time, the discussion below was even louder, and it couldn't be hidden. Long Tainan was just the chief of public security. To put it bluntly, he was just a person who maintained social security. How could he join the cabinet? In terms of qualifications, he was very shallow. Even when he was qualified to be the chief of public security, many people were skeptical. But now, he actually became the first batch of members to join the cabinet. This greatly exceeded everyone's expectations. But then everyone remembered that Long Tianan's wife was Bugnam of Gojoseon's seventh sister, and he had nepotism. For a time, everyone was relieved. Some people even thought that if Long Tainan could enter the cabinet with his qualifications, did that mean that they also had a chance? For a time, many chiefs of other departments, even the chiefs of important departments, had a look of expectation on their faces. They hoped that the next person to be called would be them. Long Tainan stood up. At this moment, he also had a look of disbelief. It wasn't until he saw Yang Qindong gently nod to him that he knew that everything was true. He immediately took out the style of a soldier and strode straight to the rostrum. In the end, even under the influence of Yang Qindong, Yang Xia had nothing to do with the Great Ming in many aspects. But Yang Xia's development time was still too short, and it was inevitable that he would be influenced by Confucianism. In that era where culture was emphasized, it was really something that many people didn't even dare to imagine that a martial artist like Long Tainan would enter the cabinet. If it wasn't for Yang Qindong's words, even if it was announced by City Lord Yu Qian, his subordinates would have objected loudly. It could be said that it was Yang Qindong who had used his influence to decide this matter. After all, without Yang Qindong, there wouldn't be Yang Xia today. Without the 5-star army, there wouldn't be such a beautiful life. After reading 5 names in a row, Yang Chendong put down the paper in his hand. Then, he glanced at the participants. For a moment, those who were under his gaze couldn't help but straighten their bodies. It was as if they were saying, "Pay attention to me, pay attention to me, I'm also very capable." But unfortunately, after looking around, Yang Chendong said, "For the time being, there are only 5 people in the cabinet. As for the other 4, I still need to consider it. But as long as you have the ability, you will have such an opportunity. Not only that, even if the officials of the Great Ming Dynasty are interested, they will also have such an opportunity." What? This sentence was like throwing a large stone into a calm pool, instantly causing everyone to exclaim in surprise. The officials of the Great Ming Dynasty can also enter the cabinet? Doesn't this mean that the competition is too strong? Yang Chendong saw this reaction, and he was happy. This was the result he wanted. He believed that it wouldn't take long for this matter to spread to the imperial court of the Great Ming Dynasty, and it would definitely cause a lot of waves. This was the reason why he built the cabinet at this time. It was to dig a big hole for the Great Ming Dynasty. As long as there were empty seats, he wouldn't have to worry about no one jumping into it. Quiet down. Seeing that everyone was discussing for a while, Yang Chendong reached out and pressed down. Suddenly, there was silence. It's still the same sentence. As long as everyone has the ability, you don't have to worry about not being discovered. Everyone will have a chance to enter the cabinet because the members of the cabinet will change every 3 to 5 years if there are no major accidents. There will be newcomers and there will also be people who leave. 3 to 5 years. This was what Yang Chendong decided after thinking for a long time. If it wasn't fixed, it would only show how terrifying the authority of the king was. This way, he wouldn't have to worry about the people below fighting for power or playing tricks with him. In fact, if one looked carefully at the 5 people who were chosen, there were a lot of things to pay attention to. Needless to say, if Yu Qian didn't enter the cabinet, the others wouldn't have the qualifications to enter the cabinet. Letting him become the head of the cabinet was also a kind of affirmation of his previous work. When he was old, he would naturally retire. At that time, it would be the time for his son to take over the position. The son would inherit the father's business and have 2 cabinet elders. This was enough glory. There were also Xin Yu and Wu Qian. One was the chief of the Ministry of Supervision and the other was the chief of the Ministry of Anti-Corruption. This was enough to show the importance that Yang Chendong attached to the supervision of officials. Presumably, if these 2 people joined the cabinet, who would dare to interfere, they would definitely be severely punished. Moreover, because Yu Qian and Xin Yu were officials from the Great Ming Dynasty, not only were they used for more than 10 years, but they also entered the cabinet. With this, it was equivalent to giving the other officials of the Great Ming Dynasty a lesson. Once the 5-star army arrived at the city gates, they would know what to do. As for the last 2, Wan Shaochen and Long Tainan. One was his uncle, and the other was his brother-in-law. They were equivalent to family. When they were there, when the cabinet made decisions, it would definitely be based on Yang Chendong's will. At least, it would not be out of control. In particular, when Long Tainan entered the cabinet, it also proved that Yang Xie's focus was beginning to lean towards the side of local law and order. With the continuous creation of new areas, how to manage them became the most important thing. The above were Yang Chendong's considerations. All aspects could be considered to have been taken care of. After the meeting, except for the 5 members of the cabinet, everyone else left. After there were no outsiders, Yang Chendong first congratulated the 5 people one by one. Then, he said, 5 cabinet elders, now that Yang Xia is growing stronger, the pressure and responsibility on you is also increasing. Not only do you have to take care of the things in your hands, but you also need to look further. For example, the South Ming Baiming, and the West where the Navy is fighting. Since you are now cabinet elders, the power in your hands is many times greater than before. Every time you make a decision, you have to be very careful. You have to consider all kinds of problems and things. Not to say that you can't make any mistakes, but you have to strive for perfection. Yes. Including Yu Qian, the 5 of them all respectfully replied, yes. Good, since everyone is now cabinet elders, then I still have to give you more responsibilities on top of your original work. For the public, now that the conquest of the Great Ming has begun, it would be best if we can peacefully accept it. For the public, the Great Ming is also a place where people know each other. This matter will require you and Shengong to worry about. If there are old friends who contact you, use them if you can. If you can't, you can also appease them. Not long after, perhaps the South Ming will send a delegation to Qiqian City to study. At that time, I will have to trouble the 2 cabinet elders. Yu Qian and Shen Yu went to receive the officials of the Great Ming. This was the most appropriate thing to do. With them as an example, the officials of the Great Ming would know what to choose in their hearts. Yes, my king. Yu Qian and Shen Yu agreed without hesitation. This was originally something that they should do. Yang Qindong nodded in satisfaction. Then, he turned his gaze to Wu Qian and said, Wu Qian, Yangxia's territory is getting bigger and bigger, and the officials needed are also getting bigger and bigger. When there are more people, it is inevitable that there will be all kinds of people. In terms of personal integrity, I still need Wu Qian to help me check. This king will still say the same thing. If something happens, investigate it. No matter who they are, who their backer is, or how big their background is, as long as they violate the law, just do whatever you want. There is also the issue of the official's property. Whoever doesn't cooperate will no longer be an official. If you want to make a name for yourself, you want to reap benefits, and you want to have power, all the good things in the world can be yours. Good, this official will remember the king's words. Wu Qian revealed a rare smile. He also felt that the pace of Yangxia's expansion was a bit fast, and there were already signs of problems among the officials. He was thinking about whether he should make a heavy hand to clean up the officials. Now, Yang Qindong gave him an imperial sword. Especially when the property disclosure policy came out, if someone's family had more money than their original income, it would be clear at a glance. If they couldn't clearly state the source of the property, it would be easier to deal with it. So, in addition to his identity as a cabinet elder, there shouldn't be any big problems when it comes to work. Cabinet Elder Long, the problem of public security is the fundamental problem of a country. As long as the country is well governed, the people can put all their energy into building the country. Therefore, the public security headquarters should not only increase the intensity of patrolling, but also send outstanding cadres to some of the new Yangxia's territories to do in-depth ideological work with the people. Let them check each other and expose the people who have problems. They should strive to strangle the crimes in the cradle, so that the losses can be reduced. Also, there are bandits and anti-Yangxia forces in some places. Don't be polite to these people. Contact the local garrison and make a thorough plan to eliminate them in one fell swoop. Don't be soft-hearted. Understood, 6th young master, please rest assured. Long Tainan put down the pen in his hand, stood up, and straightened his body. Finally, it was Luan Xiaoqin's turn. Yang Qindong handed over the work of propaganda and education to him. Remember, propaganda is very important, especially in an era where people follow the herd. If this work is done well, it can make the society more stable and the people more motivated. Otherwise, there will be a lot of chaos. There is also the issue of education. You must build more schools, and the Han people must learn to read. Let them know what is loyalty and what is treachery, and better distinguish between right and wrong. Write a report on how much money you need later. Okay, 6th young master, I will go back and have a good talk with the people from the publicity department and the education department. I will definitely do this well. Luan Xiaoqin also quickly expressed his attitude. Luan Xiaoqin was also very satisfied with managing these 2 major tasks. This proved that his words still had a lot of weight, and Yang Qindong still thought highly of him. When it came to work, he didn't have any worries. Brothers, Langzi's new book, Duke Ferocious, is already a little fat, you can go and slaughter it. Hee hee. New book, Duke Ferocious, please recommend, bookmark, click. During the new book period, please support, Lungzi thanks. Chapter 1626. With the establishment of a cabinet and the appointment of 5 elders, the news quickly spread throughout the streets of Qiqian City. After Yang Qindong listened to some work reports in the city lord's mansion, he left and returned to the palace. Because of Yang Qindong's return to the palace, Yang Lu had some free time and returned to his residence in Qiqian City. The moment he entered the residence, the housekeeper, Yang Ying, welcomed him. Master, you've had a hard day. Hee hee, it's all right. Yang Lu forced a smile and said darkly. If there's anything, let's talk in the secret room. Very quickly, Yang Lu sat on a familiar chair in the secret room, drinking tea and listening to Yang Ying's report. Master, Old Yuan has sent a message. He said that we are going to check his accounts. He is very nervous and asked when we will take action. I'm afraid he won't be able to hold on for long. After Yang Lu sat down, Yang Ying told him the news he had just received. Humph. He has the guts to take the money but doesn't have the guts to face the questioning. He's really a piece of trash. I shouldn't have worked with him. Yang Lu said. Yang Ying also nodded in agreement, but he still continued, it's just that Old Yuan knows too much, he can't get off the ship now. He also said. What did he say? Yang Lu asked unhappily. He also said that he has evidence of us. If we don't save him, we'll just die together. Yang Ying thought for a while and gritted his teeth. How dare he? As if someone had stepped on his tail, Yang Lu jumped up all of a sudden. He never thought that there would be a day when he would be threatened. Then send someone to kill him. But if he really has evidence, he must have a backup plan. If he dies, I'm afraid our matter will be exposed. Yang Ying replied worriedly. Yang Lu's originally annoyed expression immediately disappeared. That's right, how could someone like Old Yuan not have a backup plan? If he really wanted to have a falling out, the other party would definitely die, and he probably wouldn't be able to escape. After pondering for a moment, Yang Lu sighed and said, then let's keep him alive for now. Send someone to tell White Fox to keep this Yuan guy in check. It won't be too late to deal with him after the dust has settled on our side. The White Fox that Yang Lu was talking about was the CIA's director in charge of the Southern Ming area. As mentioned before, the CIA was organized by Yang Qindong's 7th wife, Su Man. At first, he just wanted to give it a try. After all the information came from the Security Bureau. Not only could there be problems, but it was also incomplete. Since ancient times, the way of checks and balances had always been one of the methods that the Wuxia emperors had been most willing to use. As such, the CIA took advantage of the situation to rise. Moreover, because of the creator, Su Maner, the management of the CIA was dominated by women. This was to distinguish them from the Security Bureau and also to fill in the gaps. After all, most of the time, women's hearts were more meticulous, and they would do things more comprehensively. Because of this, Yang Xia's sources of information had always been very accurate. The final judgment would only be made after the final report from the Comprehensive Security Bureau and the CIA. For example, when Yang Lu was sent to Southern Ming to manage the intelligence work of the Security Bureau, he naturally couldn't avoid dealing with White Fox. The ambitious Yang Lu's first thought was to get rid of the White Fox, and it was not difficult to do so. The CIA was only good at gathering information, but in terms of hands-on ability, or in other words, operational strength, they were far from the CIA. But then, Yang Lu considered that even if he killed White Fox, the CIA would send more people. Perhaps Black Fox and Flower Fox would be involved as well. In the end, he gave up on the idea of killing White Fox and changed it to temptation. To be more specific, it was temptation. Yang Lu used himself as bait and put on a posture of pursuing White Fox. It didn't take long for him to successfully turn her into one of his own. Who was Yang Lu? He was one of the 5 servants around Yang Qindong. His hidden power was so great that few people in Yangxia could compare. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that as long as these family retainers didn't commit a crime of rebellion, even if they made a mistake, their lives wouldn't be in danger. This was because the other family retainers wouldn't watch their good brothers get killed. In other words, Yang Lu was a big tree. Once you relied on him, it was equivalent to having no worries for the rest of your life. White Fox was a woman, and she would grow old. Now she was in a high position, but one day, she would retire because of age. There had to be a place for her to go. Yang Lu was undoubtedly the best backer and candidate in her eyes, and the two could be said to hit it off. After sleeping with White Fox, Yang Lu revealed his ambition little by little. At first, it scared White Fox, but she was already on the boat, and now she couldn't get off. Moreover, God knew if Yang Lu would be in trouble if she exposed the matter. But one thing was for sure, and that was that she would definitely be in trouble. She couldn't compare to Yang Lu's brothers who had gone through life and death to plead for him. In the end, White Fox also became one of Yang Lu's subordinates. After the Security Bureau and the CIA were under his control, Yang Lu didn't have any scruples when doing things in southern Ming. Soon, he colluded with the local tycoon Yuan Xian, who was the old Yuan they just mentioned, and started a smuggling business. The goods produced by Yangxia every year were extremely popular. Many merchants hated that they received too little, or else they would have earned more. Yuan Xian was one of them. Among the merchants, Yuan Xian wasn't the most powerful, but he was sufficiently obedient. He became Yang Lu's spokesperson. With Yang Lu's name, it was naturally not a problem for him to obtain more goods from Crimson City. As such, the Yuan clan stood out from the crowd of merchants, and he would only receive 10% of the profits, the remaining 90% would go to Yang Lu. Again, Yang Lu's plan was huge. He needed a lot of money, and he needed to bribe a lot of people to do things for him. Slowly, he took away 5% of Yuan Xian's profits, leaving him with only 5% of the profits. Logically speaking, this wasn't a small amount. However, the problem was that everyone knew that Yuan Xian had connections, and many poor relatives came knocking on his door. In order to not lose face in front of others, Yuan Xian could only puff himself up at his own cost. Slowly, many officials in southern Ming had their eyes on him, and the amount they wanted was not a small amount. Yuan Xian finally couldn't take it anymore. Thinking of the things he had done for Yang Lu, he demanded an exorbitant price. Not only did he want back the 5% that was taken away from him, he also wanted an additional 10%, which was a total of 20% of the profits. How could Yang Lu agree to this? The conflict between the two sides started to appear, and this was what Yang Ying reported. Yang Lu was quite relieved to leave the matter to White Fox. Not only did this woman have good looks, but she was also very capable. Otherwise, she wouldn't have become the director of the CIA in southern Ming. He was just a small merchant, and he was confident that he could control him. Yang Lu also knew that there was a problem, and he couldn't avoid it forever, so he had to hurry up. He couldn't help but look at Yang Ying and said, "Go to 4th Master Yang Yang's place and tell him this." Yang Lu returned to Crimson City and started to get busy. Establishing the cabinet was just one of the countless things he had to do. Next, he went to the People's Hero Monument and brought the 5 cabinet members to pay their respects. This was also the first time the 5 cabinet members made a public appearance, and it was to tell everyone that the cabinet was important and had great power. Next, Yang Qindong started to patrol the factories one by one. In terms of professional ability, Yang Qindong naturally couldn't compare to professionals. However, he had foresight and knowledge that exceeded this world by a few hundred years. Therefore, he either didn't speak, or he could often add the finishing touch, making people feel enlightened. Crimson City was huge, and there were many factories. If Yang Qindong wanted to visit all the large factories and departments, it would take a few months. During this time, the negotiations between Yangxia and Southern Ming finally came to a conclusion. Facing the covetous eyes of the 5-star army, Southern Ming, who wasn't prepared, finally chose to compromise. After Ma Dali and Xie Chong quarreled and argued, all the way until the 10th month of 1467. After more than 3 months of negotiations, Southern Ming finally made a lot of concessions. For example, they allowed Yang Xie to open a bank in Southern Ming, open a shop, and allow him to build a port in Fuzhou and other places near the sea. Ma Dali also represented Bugnam of Gojoseon and said that Yang Xie and Southern Ming would continue to be friends for generations. In the future, Yang Xie would continue to provide food to Southern Ming, and the price wouldn't increase by 50%, but only by 20%, etc. Just like that, the relationship between the two sides went from being at daggers drawn to the current ambiguous relationship. This was really unexpected. After Ma Dali finished the final negotiations, he took a ship back to Crimson City and reported to Yang Qindong. In the political affairs hall of the palace, Yang Qindong said that he had worked hard and that things were done well. This made Ma Dali smile. As if he could see that Yang Qindong was in a good mood, Ma Dali took the opportunity to ask his question. Sixth young master, the current situation is that our Yang Xie is very strong, and the 5-star army has recovered their fighting strength after 3 months of rest. Why do you still want to negotiate with Southern Ming? Ma Dali wasn't the only one who wanted to ask this question. Many officials were also filled with doubts. This was because according to Yang Qindong's style of doing things, he had never negotiated with other countries, regions, or powers. If there was a disagreement, he would start a war. Sometimes, he didn't even need an excuse. Yang Qindong knew that it was time to answer this question. Even if he didn't give an answer today, there would still be people who would ask tomorrow. In order to solve the problem once and for all, he said, war stems from politics, and politics is higher than war. Whether a war can be won or not, it can't be measured purely from a military perspective. It also needs to be combined with political factors. Chapter 1627. For example, let's attack the Southern Ming Empire. We can definitely win, but how much will we have to pay? You have to know that in the eyes of many Han people, the Great Ming Empire is still orthodox. Even if they are divided into the Northern and Southern Ming Empires, it is still the same. If the people do not lose their minds, it is not wise to attack rashly. Furthermore, if we take over the Southern Ming Empire by force, not to mention what kind of resistance we will encounter, the Southern Ming Empire will not give up easily. Their destructive power is obvious. As such, if we want to recover and rebuild, we will need to invest a large amount of manpower and resources. As for these, we are not ready yet. This is also the reason why we are negotiating first. Yang Qindong answered Ma Dali's question seriously this time. This caused the other party to continuously nod his head, as if he had thought of something. Sixth young master, in other words, negotiations are only a method. In the end, we might use force. It is not a possibility, but we will definitely use force. Some people are like this. If you only show off your muscles, they will not be afraid and will think that it is just for show. As long as you place a large blade on their neck and let them feel the coldness, they will truly be afraid and lower their heads. Thus, once the Yang Xie has made all the preparations and has enough reasons to convince the world, they will make their move. Speaking to here, Yang Qindong's eyes flashed with a complicated expression, but he quickly became firm again. As for the reasons needed, someone should be sending it to us soon. Ma Dali naturally did not understand the deeper meaning of Yang Qindong's words. As a qualified official, he had to know what he should know and what he should not inquire about. Otherwise, he would only bring trouble to himself. Yes, sixth young master, this official understands. That's right, before Minister Xie Chong left, he said that the Southern Ming Empire's observation team will soon arrive at Crimson City. Do you think this is a method to attack them? Of course. Yang Qindong nodded and gave an affirmative answer. This observation group will be led by your Ministry of Foreign Affairs. You must entertain them well. They are the best propaganda tool. When they return to the Southern Ming dynasty, they will definitely bring us many unexpected surprises. Yang Qindong grew up in the 80s and 90s, and there was a very popular saying that the moon in foreign countries was rounder than in China. Just because of this slogan, who knew how many capable and talented people racked their brains to go abroad? Even if it was to wash dishes or do small jobs there, they were unwilling to return to their motherland. This time, in the eyes of many people in the southern Ming Empire, Crimson City was a foreign country. It was believed that the saying that the moon in Crimson City was rounder than the moon in the southern Ming Empire would soon become popular. There's an old saying that goes, guarding the mouths of the people is more dangerous than guarding the rivers. As long as this observation group dared to come, Yang Chendong would let this observation group become Yang Xie's lobbyists in the southern Ming dynasty. At that time, the news would spread from 1 to 10, and from 10 to 100, and from 100 to 1,000. There would be a huge problem within the southern Ming Empire, and this would be the best support for the next attack against the southern Ming Empire. Just as Yang Chendong and Ma Dali were discussing the matter of the observation group. In the capital of the southern Ming Empire, Xia Chong had also rushed back, covered in dust. In the palace hall, Xia Chong handed up a memorial. It was the final result of the negotiations with Ma Dali. Although there were many humiliating terms in it that could be said to be humiliating, at least the 5-star army was cut off. For the southern Ming Empire, this was already considered a good result. Of course, these terms were not equal, and Zhu Qizhen was not foolish enough to make it public. That would be slapping himself and his officials' faces. Thus, after he received the memorial, he changed the topic. My beloved officials, Yang Xie has only been developing for a little more than 10 years. However, they have such powerful strength. Why is that? This time, without waiting for Zhu Qizhen to call out names, the officials below automatically stood up. The person leading them was the Minister of Revenue, Wang Zhua. This person was also old and wanted to retire, but in the end, he was urged to stay by Zhu Qizhen. It was not because of anything else, but because there was no one more suitable for this position in the southern Ming Empire than Wang Zhua. Money and provisions were important, and it was not reassuring to leave it to others. Wang Zhua stood up and replied, Your Majesty, this subject has always heard that Yang Xie's Crimson City's commerce and industry are very developed. It is because of this that they were able to earn a large amount of money in a very short period of time. This must be the foundation of Yang Xie's strength. That's right. Although Zhu Qizhen did not want this result, he had to admit that this result was very correct. Thus, he nodded. Minister Wang's words are very true. Yang Xie's strength is greater than theirs. They have a strong foundation of money, and their financial resources are very sufficient. This is the reason why they were able to establish such a powerful army. Here comes the problem. What they can do, we can do as well. This time, Minister Xia put in a lot of effort to help us get an observation team. This emperor thinks that we should all go to Crimson City and take a look. We can learn from the enemy and subdue them. Zhu Qizhen credited the matter of the observation group to Xia Chong. In fact, it was Yang Chendong who suggested it. This was the emperor's power play. If it was Yang Chendong who invited everyone, they would only be grateful to Yang Chendong. But if Zhu Qizhen said that he fought for it, then everyone would be grateful to him. As soon as he said this, the officials below began to discuss. The officials in this era did not have many exciting lives. If they did, they would just gather together to watch singing and dancing and drink wine. As for climbing mountains and swimming, only those officials who were not successful could do that. Just like today's officials in the main hall, which one of them did not prepare for court at the 5th watch and enter court at the 6th watch? They woke up so early every day, and some of them did not even have enough time to sleep, yet they still wanted to go and take a look. It was beautiful. But now, there was such an opportunity to go out and take a look. It was a trip at public expense. Previously, there was news that Yang Xie would pay for the entire observation group. This was naturally Yang Chendong's own initiative, because he still hoped that these people would become his propagandists and promote Yang Xie's power. Naturally, when Zhu Qizhen said this, it was because he wanted Minister Xia Chong to fight for it. Regardless of the reason, to be able to travel at public expense, it was said that Crimson City was very advanced, and there were many good things there, many of which could not be bought in the capital of the Southern Ming dynasty. Just based on this point, who would not be willing? For a time, many officials in the imperial court were eager to give it a try. They were all thinking about signing up as soon as possible after the imperial court ended. They did not want to be unable to sign up just because the quota was full. That would be too much of a pity. Zhu Qizhen agreed in principle that everyone wanted to go to Crimson City to take a look. Firstly, he wanted to let these people see how Crimson City developed and learn from it. Even if he couldn't learn the essence of it, it would still be beneficial to imitate it and learn it. Secondly, he wanted these officials to feel a sense of urgency. Looking at the development of Crimson City and then looking at themselves, wouldn't they feel guilty? Shouldn't I work hard after coming back? Not only that, Zhu Qizhen himself also wanted to go and take a look. Of course, it was only a thought. He did not have the courage. What if he went to Crimson City and was detained? He definitely did not have Yang Qindong's strength and courage to bring 500 black cavalry and rush into southern Cloud Manor, which had tens of thousands of soldiers from 3 provinces. After the court session ended, the officials who went to the Ministry of Rites to register quickly formed a long line. This made the host, Minister Xia Chong, happy but also worried.